third and last day of the 11th UNREC. I hope we all enjoyed the last 2 days. And as we crown up the UNREC today, there are lots of exciting topics for discussions. This morning, I'm going to be your co-chair, and my name is Dr. Gerald Ubai. Let me ask my co-chair to introduce herself.
Thank you very much, Gerald. Good morning, everyone. My name is Pauline Biachika, and I'm the co-chair for this morning.
Thank you so much, Colin. I would like to confirm that we have all our panelists on air. And I will quickly just read out the names. Okay, yeah, I have confirmation that we do have all our panelists. So, ladies and gentlemen, this morning, we're going to have panelists from the region who are going to take us through a wonderful panel discussion this morning. And I will start by reading out or introducing, we shall start by introducing the panelists, then we'll go to the questions. So the first panelist is Dr. Eugene Mutimura, who is the Executive Secretary, National Council for Science and Technology in Rwanda. Friends, all the panelists do have very elaborate CVs, so we shall not go into the details. The second panelist is Dr. Martin Patrick Ongol, who is the Acting Executive Secretary, Uganda National Council for Science and Technology. And the third panelist is Mr. Boniface Wekesa Wanyama, Director for Research, Accreditation and Quality Assurance, National Commission for Science, Technology, and Innovation, Kenya. May I now invite my co-chair to introduce the other panelists.
Our fourth panelist this morning is Professor Tatien Masharabu, who is the Executive Permanent Secretary, National Commission for Science, Technology, and Innovation on Burundi. The fifth panelist is Dr. Amos Nungu, who is the Director General of the Tanzania Commission for Science and Technology. The sixth panelist is Dr. Solomon Beno, who is the Director General for Science and Research Affairs in the Ministry of Science and Higher Education of Ethiopia. And our seventh panelist is Professor Elijah Malinga Wanda, who is the Director General, National Commission for Science and Technology of Malawi. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, my co-chair, Pauline. Colleagues, the panelists will share with us on the topic, regional perspective, fostering research integrity and responsible conduct of research. We will be going in the order in which the panelists were introduced. And please, we do request the panelists to take no more than 5 minutes, in sharing with us. And we do have 3 questions. The first question, and I hope all the panelists are set for our first question. Briefly, share with us the status of research regulation in your country with emphasis on research integrity and responsible conduct of research. Please, as you share that, give us some of the key challenges and solutions in fostering research integrity and responsible conduct of research. And the first person to take us on is Dr. Eugene Mutimura. Dr. Mutimura, please come through. Okay, I'm reliably informed that Dr. Eugene has temporarily dropped off. So we will now go to Dr. Martin Ongol.
Uh, Thank you, moderator. I would also like to say thank uh, our collaborators who are within the East African Union, East African region, and also members who are attending this conference. So basically, when we talk about status of research regulation in Uganda, it's mainly governed through the Uganda National Council for Science and Technology Act 1990, which specifies UNCST as the lead organization in terms of research regulation and compliance. That's the overarching regulation that we have in Uganda, but also there are other institutions that also work along in enforcing research regulations. For instance, we have the NARO, the National Agricultural Research Organization, that also have some guidelines and regulations on research, Uganda National Health Research Organization, National Drug Authority, in relation to trial of clinical products for either treatment of humans or animals. And then also we have the National Environment Management Authority, where they work along research that protect the environment, especially when it comes to genetically modified organisms. And actually, within UNCST, we have like about 12 guidelines that has been developed over the years. And there are several, and the most popular one is the guidelines on trial of participation of human subjects in research. But then we also have other guidelines on biosafety, and the others still also being developed. I think from our perspective, we need to now transform these guidelines into regulations. Now, the key challenges and solutions in fostering research integrity and responsible conduct, I think number one is, of course, the changing research context, which is quite rapid, and we need to adapt our regulations and standards along that. And I think the most prominent example is, for instance, the COVID-19 pandemic. There is the One Health issue, and then there are other contexts like climate change and the like that we need to make sure that our regulations get to that. And then, of course, the other one is awareness. And when we're talking about awareness, is throughout the research value chain, from the researchers themselves, policy makers, and the like. Many people still do not appreciate the importance of research integrity and responsible conduct of research. And even our experience has indicated that there are some offices or universities where the research integrity office is given the most limited attention. So I think we need to create that awareness. And then, of course, from the UNCST perspective, the volume of protocols for approval and the like are increasing, and they are also quite complex in nature, and sometimes involving a lot of consultations and the like. And so there is need to improve the timeliness of the review process and the feedback. And then another challenge that we have, of course, is in terms of funding. It's quite difficult for us to move into the field to find out if what is stated in the protocols is actually being followed. And we need more funding at that level, at the national level. But also, I think when it comes to institutional level, you'll find out the most of the research and integrity offices underfunded to effectively monitor those standards. And then, of course, other issues is like the quality of protocols. Sometimes they are really very poorly written, and that really becomes a major challenge, and sometimes is both frustrating from the regulator's perspective and also from the researcher's perspective. And then research is diverse, and new ideas keep on coming, and therefore our regulations also we need to keep on updating them. Another challenge that we are having is, I think, legal issues and court cases that we have in terms of research integrity and responsible conduct of research. These are becoming more, and there are NGOs and entities that are very alert to see that no breach occurs. And I think right now, probably to my knowledge, we have court cases running, probably about 3 billion Uganda shillings. And then, of course, we need to have very strong systems for data capturing, especially this will help in detecting cases of maybe plagiarism or other issues involved with research misconduct. So basically, briefly, this is the overview I would like to give. Back to you, moderator.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Martin Ongol, for taking us through the regional perspective in terms of fostering research integrity and responsible conduct of research, with a specific emphasis on Uganda. We now move to our neighbor, right across the eastern side, to Kenya. Mr. Boniface Wekesa, please share with us what's happening in Kenya. Mr. Wanyama? Okay.
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Sorry, I had a problem trying to unmute, but I think now I'm on. My name is Wanyama Boniface, Director responsible for matters of research, accreditation, and quality assurance in Kenya. So I want to begin by saying that we have very elaborate legal and institutional framework here in Kenya to address matters of research integrity. Of course, at the top of it is anchored within our constitution, Kenya of the Constitution 2010, which provides for quite a number of things that refer to issues of research and research integrity. Below there, of course, we have the Constitution. That is the national, the Science, Technology, and Innovation Act of 2013. That is the law that anchors all these issues of research integrity in place. And of course, under there, we have regulations, which also go a long way in terms of reinforcing matters that relate to science. It's like our colleague mentioned from Uganda, we also have other laws across board, and some of these laws have also established several institutions that are also responsible for matters of research integrity. So within the Science, Technology, and Innovation Act, we have established the National Commission for Science, Technology, and Innovation, and that is where I'm working from. And this is really where all matters of research integrity are actually handled. Of course, the other institutions really work in close collaboration with the National Commission for Science, Technology, and Innovation. And of course, within that law, when it comes to matters of research, then the act that establishes an ACOSTI for that matter, if I say that in brief, stands out on matters of research, science, and technology. So I wish again to mention here that those other institutions that are also involved in regulations include institutions like Kenya Wildlife Service, Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, the Biosafety Authority. We have also NEMA. We also have Pharmacy and Poisons Board, which particularly handles matters that relate to clinical trials. All of them, of course, they are coordinated under the Science, Technology, and Innovation Act. But the Commission has already issued, say, a license for a given research. I wish to say that in summary, how do we do this? At the Commission, we do this by, one, we have registered trying to understand what they do. We accredit research institutions, we accredit programs within research institutions. We accredit what we call institutional issues of research quality assurance, issues of licensing of research, and issues of monitoring and evaluation of institutions as well as programs.
Mr.
So,
Wanyama,
in essence,
could I request that you activate your video, please?
Hello?
Could I request that you
Hello?
activate your video?
I do what?
Activate your video.
Oh, I think there's if I activate my video, I'll have a challenge with it. Let me try it, but I don't want to. Let me try that as well and see whether that, people want to see my face.
Yeah, you could do it just briefly and then you deactivate it.
Okay. I hope you can see. Yes, my video. I don't know why it's refusing. It's a bit of technical. I'll try to get that.
We can go ahead in case you're having challenges.
Yeah, it's refusing to accept the video. Okay, it's actually, sorry, it's giving me a bit of technical.
Please,
to accept. So
Mr. Wanyama, let's proceed, and then you'll sort it out for the next set of questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to sort it out. So let me also now address a few of the, of course, within the Commission, we have established what we call National Bioethics Committee, which is the advisory committee on matters of research ethics. This committee also provides an oversight once we established what we call institutional ethics review committees at the institutional level. Then the National Bioethics Committee plays an oversight role in terms of ensuring that the issues of research integrity are actually handled at the institutional level. So the National Bioethics does provide that oversight. Of course, it is domiciled within the Commission and providing that oversight, because one of the things we realize that issues of research integrity, we have the institutions themselves, particularly the research institutions and the universities, they have the greatest responsibility in terms of ensuring that we address issues that relate to research misconduct or plagiarism, falsifications, and so on and so forth. So we aim at strengthening that aspect at that institutional level by accrediting the committees, monitoring their operations, and reviewing the progress and the implementations of the proposals that they actually approve. I also want just to finish by highlighting a few challenges, of course, because that was part two of your question which you say that we need to address some challenges. One of them is the issue of inadequate policies and guidelines for research misconduct, to address research misconduct at the institutional level. We are working on this, but this still remains a challenge. Two, the threshold of proof that a misconduct has actually been committed. Again, that becomes a challenge, because you need to prove that that misconduct has been committed and it's intentional. The other issue is an allegation of research misconduct is really a lengthy process and consists of several steps, including inquiry, investigations, and making recommendations to various authorities. Again, that remains really a challenge. And then another challenge is that some of the institutions do not report issues of research misconduct for fear of losing credibility. Again, that is really, really a challenge. We also have a challenges that we are saying that, I mean, I've already mentioned this, that the threshold of proof that really a misconduct was made, and it becomes a big challenge. So all in all, I wish to say that we as a commission, we are looking at some of those challenges by one, trying to revise our law, because for the Science, Technology and Innovation Act went at least into a greater detail in terms of addressing some of these misconducts. But we still feel that there are still some inadequacies within our law that we need to address. The other challenge as I finish, which I may need to bring on board, which is relevant, whenever the kind of laws we have only apply within the country. For example, when we do research licensing, our licensing cannot be applied to the other East African countries. And therefore, again, that for us becomes also a challenge in our view. And I want to finish by saying that perhaps through this meeting that we are having today, we shall be able to address on how we can be able to strengthen our partnerships so that we are able to have laws that can apply both to Kenya and Uganda, and particularly when it comes to research integrity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wanyama. We've certainly learned a lot in as far as research integrity is concerned in Kenya. Now let's move on to our next panelist, who is Professor Masharabu. Professor Masharabu, I kindly request that you activate your video.
Okay, thank you, moderator. I'm Professor Masharabu, the Executive Permanent Secretary, the National Commission for Science, Technology, Innovation in Burundi. So what about the status of research regulation in Burundi? We have provision from the constitution in that regard. So research regulation is led by our National Commission for Science, Technology and Innovation, but we have specific regulations, for example, for ISABU, which is the institute in charge of research in agriculture. We have regulations for statistics or health, particularly in clinical trials. We have also regulations for pharmacy, for accountants, and for other bodies. And globally, we are the law governing science in general its drafting is underway. And I have to say that the organization and the functioning of public and private services in Burundi, including the research sector, are governed by a number of principles such as equality, continuity, security, quality, efficiency, and accessibility. However, in terms of ethics, ethics is not only limited to the respect of the laws, it extends to a set of behaviors with strong moral connotations. And in the African context, we have some common core values such as wisdom, dignity, ubuntu, etc. In terms of challenges, we are lacking, we don't have a holistic national research ethics committee. But besides that perspective, there is a need to deeply identify gaps and strengthen capacities of our country in order to respond to the globalized research and innovation ecosystem. More specifically for Burundi, this should come out by providing an enable environment in terms of legal and institutional framework, financial and technical support or collaboration to Burundi National Commission for Science, Technology and Innovation, which is a young institution aged 4 years since the appointment of its first executive secretary. I am the second appointed executive secretary since this year. So this, with the collaboration and the support to the commission will allow us to fulfill our mandate on all matters relating to policies, regulation, legislation in the fields of science, technology, research, and innovation. That's the key challenge since our commission is very, very young. Yeah, back to moderator, I thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Masharabu, for sharing with us. I will later on come to see how we get to integrate all these. So we'll now move on to Tanzania. And from Tanzania, we have Dr. Hadija Yahaya Halima, and she's standing in for Dr. Amos Nungu. Dr. Halima, you do have the floor.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm representing the Director General, Dr. Amos Nungu, on this talk, and well, I had a presentation, but I guess I will just go straight on to the questions which I have received this morning. The status of research regulation in Tanzania. In Tanzania, COSTECH is the principal advisory organ for the government in terms of advising on all matters related to science, technology, and innovation. And that includes all research in the country. However, we do have other bodies, other institutions under the government in the different ministries who are responsible for example, health research is under the Ministry of Health, and we have a National Institute of Medical Research, so that's solely responsible for biomedical research. However, we have a joint way of regulation and coordination, so to speak, and we also have an institution of research for agriculture and livestock, so we have that kind of network of structures which work together to make sure that research is regulated. But the COSTECH is solely responsible for providing research permits for all the research that is conducted in the country. And it's also responsible for setting standards that would guide implementation and use of research. And in saying that, we do have frameworks that we have actually developed, and these are overarching frameworks. We do have a research registration which sets out the rules or regulations on how to register research in the country, and that includes all collaborative research, even the ones in the country. And we have developed, I think we launched it last year, maybe 2 years ago, the National Research Integrity Framework of Tanzania, which sets, again, overarching principles and guidance in which all the related R&D institutions, including higher learning institutions, private and non-governmental organizations have to follow suit. In the research integrity framework, we're actually guiding institutions to how to develop correct, and we assist them by even providing some of the standard operating procedures. And we also have guided framework for postdoc research in the sense that we didn't have a program for postdoc research, and we feel that in establishing research career, the postdoc should be part and parcel of the research system in the country. So the postdoc is focusing on the national priority research areas. We use this to guide R&D institutions and all the stakeholders to conduct research with professional and ethical considerations. And one of the challenges we have is that we have never had a separate guidelines for animal research or environmental research. So for us, the research integrity catches everything. We insist on adhering to professionalism as well as ethical conduct in research. We also have the National Research and Innovation Monitoring Framework, which when we monitor research and innovation, that also comes into play as part of the regulation. So how do we work with all these other networks? And we have more or less not equal mandates, but overlapping mandates when it comes to research. COSTECH is represented in all the major research institutions. Like, for example, right now, we work with the National Institute of Medical Research, and we are chairing their REC. So COSTECH is represented there. And when we have the Research Registration Committee at COSTECH, which has a national representation, including high offices, immigration, the police, NIMRI, and all other stakeholders are also represented. So that is the way we regulate. Now, coming back to another question. Sorry. Yeah, what are some of the key challenges and solutions in fostering research integrity and responsible conduct of research? Now, given the scenario of how COSTECH mingles with other stakeholders, even though it's supposed to be an apex organization, it is under the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. And then we have other R&D institutions which are under the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, and that's where the challenge comes in. It's very difficult if you are more or less in the same level of administrative structure to command that you receive or you can regulate and you can, put a stop to when research misconduct happens. That is where the challenge is. But we're trying to get through that. We're trying to harmonize, and we have come up at COSTECH with a new strategic plan with one strategic objective, which is addressing that area. And we think we have named it a whole government approach to regulation of science, technology, and innovation. And embedded in, we are going to bring together all the agencies that are doing research, and we're going to set goals and make all these decisions at one starting. And therefore, we can be able to monitor the type of research that is going on in the country and use those results to make policy and thinking. How has COVID pandemic affected research integrity and responsible conduct of research, and what can science community and research regulators respond to this? I think we've never had such a dilemma when it came to COVID research in Tanzania. We had faced a multiple kind of infodemics, which were very disturbing. And the researchers were very adapting, coming up with the proposals. But then,
Dr. Hadija,
yes.
Yes. I would request that for now you hold it there. we'll come back to you on that. Thank you so much for
Okay.
sharing with us.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we'll come back to you shortly on that. Yes,
Thank you.
but otherwise we've learned of some of the initiatives that you do have in Tanzania. May I now invite Dr. Solomon Beno from Ethiopia to share with us.
Good morning, all. Thank you very much for inviting me to this important conference. And first, I would like to ask my apologies that I'm handling this panel discussion while I have a national research strategy validation workshop far away from Addis and in the southern part of the country. So in case there is some connection problem, apology for that. And thank you again for inviting me. My name is Solomon Binor. I'm Director General for Science and Research Affairs at the Ministry of Science and Higher Education, a ministry in charge of overseeing all science activities in the country. In Ethiopia, we have what we call the National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy, the one which oversees all scientific, technological and innovation activities led by the Prime Minister of the country. Under that, each and every ministry or research institute or higher education institutes are mandated to conduct research activities, and hence all matters related to legal affairs as well as funding opportunities are overseen by the National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy. The Ministry of Science and Education, just a young ministry, established in 2018, only just 3 years ago. And the main mandate of the ministry is to oversee all scientific research activities, including responsible conduct of research and scientific integrity. And the ministry, of course, main mandate is to oversee all higher education institutes as well as TVET or technical and vocational education and training institutes. So above all, the ministry is the one which is in charge of all research activities, and hence research ethics is also administered by my ministry. And when we talk about research ethics in Ethiopia, we have a long experience, particularly on human health research ethics. And we currently have the 5th version of this research ethics guideline, the National Research Ethics Guideline. But mainly that guideline focuses on human health research ethics aspect. And soon the Ministry of Science and Higher Education was established. What we were focusing was to diverse and address all research ethics aspects, not only on human, but also in animal, environment, and other aspects. So currently we are revising the 5th version of the National Research Ethics Guideline, and we have a final version of what we call the 6th version for the human health research, while as a comprehensive national research ethics, we have the latest one, which is issued a month ago at national level, and which of course is expected to be implemented by universities or higher education institutes and research institutes. And for information, we have more than 57, almost now 58 public universities and more than 400 higher education institutes that are administered by private shareholders. And you can imagine the level of research ethics or the matters that we have to conduct on research ethics aspects. And hence the ministry under it has got the National Research Ethics Review Committee. And this committee is mandated to oversee, provide capacity building, and open institutional review boards in various research institutes and public universities. So far, we have tried to address and open an institutional review board at various research institutes, but considering the large number of our public universities and private universities, we are still far behind from our aim, and hence we are at the infant stage where we establish IRBs in universities. And there is also another commission, which we call it the Environmental and Climate Change Commission. Under it, there is a Bioethics, National Bioethics Committee. They are mainly in charge of GMO regulations based on the recommendation set by the Parliament. And hence, all GMO-related activities are overseen by this commission, and under it, there is a National Bioethics Committee. With regard to the second question, the key challenges and solutions with regard to responsible conduct, research, and scientific integrity, I think the main challenge in the country, as I've said, it is because of the lack of the large number of RBs. There is a strong abuse in conducting research, particularly human and animals. And hence, for that, we have a big challenge. Also, we're in an initial step where we try to expand our RFPs across research institutes and universities. We still are far behind from our target, and hence this is a big challenge for us. And of course, professionals in the field of research ethics are very limited. And recently, the oldest university, Addis Ababa University, has launched a postgraduate program where they train graduate students in bioethics field of specializations. Another challenge is, I think, continued plagiarism, particularly in postgraduate program students in thesis and dissertations. And this recently has been able to be, I think, tackled using softwares, licensed softwares that are prescribed and used by mostly by research institutes and universities. But the level of the usage or utilization of software in private universities is not as strong as in the public. So I could say these plagiarism issues are a big concern in private higher education institutions. The most recent challenge, which is not, of course, exceptional for Ethiopia, but also for the globe, is, I think, current issues in scientific publication, which is predatory publication. As you all know, predatory publication is a big concern, particularly for countries like us, Africa, because of various reasons, and hence we are highly affected, followed by the Asians and some of Southern Europe countries. And for this, as a solution, what we come up is for research ethics or research in animals and humans and others, environment. We have revised, as I've said earlier, our national guidelines so that it becomes comprehensive and addresses all issues, and not only on human, but also on other aspects. And with regard to plagiarism, we are trying to expand our application of softwares that mitigate or prevent plagiarism issues, mainly seen by graduate programs while making their master's or PhD dissertations. And with regard to predatory publication, we had various schemes to mitigate its impact, particularly in research, of which one is we revised the National Higher Education Academic Promotion and Publication Directive, a directive issued and circulated nationally to all public and private higher education, as well as for research institutes, where it strictly guides or strictly prevents researchers to not to publish in predatory publishers, meaning in journals or publishers that are not indexed by Web of Science, Scopus, and PubMed. So we have tried to limit this one, and we, of course, have revised our national journals evaluation and accreditation mechanism. Of course, we set and established the first accreditation system in the nation, where we try to give more emphasis to our own local journals handled by research institutes and universities. And hence last year, for the first time, we have accredited 16 journals. And the main aim of accreditation of these journals is to make their impact and quality visible, and hence they become indexed through time in global or scientifically accepted indexing databases like Web of Science or Scopus and PubMed. And these are, I think, the measures that we're taking, but still we have lots of reform activities that are directly or indirectly related to research ethics. And we have also another measure or reform on preventing predatory publication. We have
Dr.
a very well
Benor,
organized.
Dr. Benor, I would
hello?
request that you summarize so that we're able to have others also share before we go to the next.
Apologies that I'm having this panel session while I'm expected to present the national strategy document at 10 a.m. So if I'm allowed, I would like to address all the questions, and I kindly request you to excuse me and leave soon. So that's all about, I think, our challenges and solutions. And if there's any other question I could address, otherwise I kindly request to allow me to leave soon. Thank you.
Okay, in that case, please proceed and share with us on the other two questions. The
Thank you
COVID
so much.
pandemic and how do we integrate all this?
Thank you so much. So with regard to the challenges with the pandemic, and of course the pandemic was a big challenge. Initially, it was a big challenge. Almost all the activities of universities and research institutes in conducting research was interrupted. But later on, it becomes an opportunity in that there was a strong national committee which was organized that includes also diaspora, intellectual diaspora Ethiopians abroad. And thanks to the technology, through technology like this one, using Zooms, where we were able to set and conduct various pandemic-related research activities. And hence it becomes, I think, a good opportunity, and particularly the role played by universities, particularly by public universities in the pandemic was so high, and not only on research outputs, technology provisions or modifications, there was also a strong community service and likewise. And public awareness activities by research institutes and universities played a great role. And of course, one thing that I have to stress is also while conducting research, I think the level given to research ethics or the focus given to research ethics was not as strong as before, but now it's getting better comparing to the previous one. And how best we should work as a region and in ensuring scientific integrity, a very good question. I think when we talk of most of the time, particularly when we talk of research ethics, we mainly focus on this research on human. But nowadays, I think we need to diverse our vision so that when we say research ethics, by definition, it's a very comprehensive. It means a research, while we conduct research, we need to take care of that it should not harm us, humans, but also we should equally also be responsible for human environment. As we are a country or East African country trying to emerge and develop, and there are several investment opportunities, and you can imagine the level of pollution that are happening on the environment. And hence, with that, we need to, are you with me?
Yes,
Just an echo, okay. So we need to diversify, and of course we need to have a network, like something East African countries research ethics network, where we try to strengthen our activities on research ethics or research on human and animal and environment, as well as on ways of tackling such a plagiarism issues, as well as on predatory publications. Honestly speaking, predatory publication is a matter that affects not only individuals' reputations, institutions' reputations, nowadays also a country reputation. As you all know, there is an agency under the United Nations, which you call WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization. They yearly publish innovation index, and one of the criteria to rank countries based on innovation index is the level of outputs of research publications. And when we talk about research publication, we like or not, we are referring to predatory publications. So we have to be very careful in not publishing in predatory journals, so that we try to sum up and recognize the East African countries in the rank of innovation index. And for that, I think we need to have a very strong and coordinated activities, both in research ethics and in predatory publications. And I would recommend such a type of network to be established so that we exchange ideas and we try to execute a better option of scientific integrity and responsible conduct of research across the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Beno, for sharing with us. We do appreciate your time and the wonderful information that you've shared with us. We wish you the very best in your presentation at 10.
Thank you.
Okay. It seems we are unable to have Professor Malinga from Malawi. And with that, we'll now move on to the next set of questions. So, dear participants, as we drive all the country-specific perspectives home and to fit it into the conference theme, I now invite my co-chair, Professor Pauline Biachika, to take us on.
Thank you very much, Gerald. I'll just bring you back to the theme of the conference, which is fostering research integrity and responsible conduct of research in Uganda and the region. So our dear panelists, we have 2 questions to go, but because of time, we are going to combine them into one question so that we can address everything before we close this session. So the first question, and we'll have the panelists respond in the order in which they are listed in our abstract book. The question is, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected research integrity and responsible conduct of research, with particular emphasis to your region? And we know that the effects of lack of research integrity and responsible conduct of research is initially locally to the country where the research is conducted, but it spills over to the region and eventually globally. So what can the science community do to foster research integrity and responsible conduct of research, especially knowing that the COVID-19 pandemic is still with us for a while? Over to you, and I'll start with our first panelist, Dr. Eugene Mutimura. I don't know if he has managed to join us by now from Rwanda. Okay, if Dr. Eugene is not there, we'll move on to Dr. Martin Ongol from Uganda. Over to you, Martin.
Thank you. So the COVID-19 pandemic affected research integrity and responsible conduct in Uganda to a certain extent. And I think the first bit of it is like how COVID came in. It was first detected in China around December 2019, but then quickly it was already with us by March 21. But then things were unclear, and it was really a very life-threatening disease. Then all of a sudden it's like, how do we go about and the like, and that really provided a very good opportunity in any case somebody was intending to do a misconduct. And because of that, one thing that we saw was like several parallel entities came, and they were all talking about research and on COVID-19, and there was a tendency to bypass the research regulatory systems, and sometimes we have to track them and then try to make sure that they are online. And then another issue that came was the scientific approach versus the public opinion. And of course, I think the latest one was the science of COVID-X, and the consumers saying that this is what we needed. And that really put us in a very tight corner where we had to balance everything to ensure that research integrity and responsible conduct is not bypassed. And then I will just move to question 4, which talks about research conduct and breach in research integrity do not only affect the country in which the research is conducted, but the effect spills over globally, and how best can we work as a region. Yeah, there are several cases of research integrity, and normally once that has been identified. And there is one thing that we need to note: how research integrity is detected, or how it really becomes a major problem. In the initial stages, it may not be well known, but now when you have reached that level where you are now conducting very high profile research, that has that global transformative effect. And that's where the research integrity becomes a problem, and actually it can affect the reputation of a whole country. So I think one of the ways that we can work is, number one, we need to collaborate and have knowledge exchange and sharing of information on responsible code of conduct and research integrity at a national level. And then, like, for instance, in East Africa, we know that through East African community, we have developed the East African standards. And I think through the East African Science and Technology Commission, we can develop a regional standard for research misconduct and integrity. And I think this would really help us to go a long way. And then another thing is like closing on the gaps in regulations and standards, and to put in efforts to make sure that these regulations are quite strong. And then I think there is also need for a multi-institutional approach in monitoring and fortifying the research integrity within the region. I will just keep it highly summarized. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. We now move on to our next panelist, who is Mr. Wekesa Wanyama. Mr. Wanyama, are you there? Okay, it seems he has dropped off. We'll move on to Professor Etienne Masharabu from Burundi.
Okay, thank you. On the question related to how COVID-19 affected research integrity, as you know, a number of barrier measures were taken in order to face the pandemics, but this caused also several problems related to physical contact for field activities, for field surveys, you know, and also this limited also the free movement of researchers. And by the way, we noted the development of online platforms for lecturing, for meetings like this conference, for data collection and so on. But this led also to other problems. And it is observable, some studies undertaken even in the county or in the region which had not been subjected to any forms of ethics reviews. This, of course, lead also, this affects research integrity. And for example, we are now facing contemporary ethical issues associated with the advances in science and research. And some example, without being exhaustive, are electronic consent processes, electronic data entry, etc. For example, for electronic consent processes, I don't know if you get time to read and understand the terms and the condition, just you agree and you proceed. So in concluding, this is an opportunity for the science community and research regulators to handle that issue. I thank you.
Thank you very much, moderator. Thank you very much, Professor Masharabu, for those very good remarks. We now move on to Dr. Halima Hadija from Tanzania, who is speaking on behalf of the Director General of the Tanzania Commission for Science and Technology.
Yes, thank you, moderator. I don't have anything different from what my previous colleagues have spoken, but I think we also had some complications regarding an influx of so many proposals wanting ethical clearance, and it was impossible to handle proper and rigorous, meticulous review processes. And then we also had to suspend the data collection for all the trials that were in place, all research. And we also realized that another challenge came in is that we had so many innovations in local medications or local concoctions that are supposedly curing coronavirus infections. And then we realize innovations in health are now also a problem, because then people come up with new medicines, they come with technologies which could be diagnostic, and they all need approval. So it's a bit challenging for the review process to be meticulous as it is. And we understand we also had some research misconduct, and we had to stop some and take some strict actions against that. We realized then we also have now new technology development, which necessitates us to have biobanks. We had collected data for some of the healthcare settings, and we think one of the challenges is now that we also have to have an open concept, kind of. We have to process ethical reviews even when we have emergencies, but we do not have set up to accommodate that. So that is one of the things that we need to work out, I think, for the whole region. And then we also realized with the COVID came new methods of data collection, as my previous speakers have spoken, that may distort the consent processes, and especially in areas where technology is very low, but there's a common use of mobile phones. We know that in West Africa, mobile penetration has about 80%. So we had scientists trying to cajole people using those technologies. So what could we do? I do not have any different opinions, but I think the regional integration here has to come into place. We need to share knowledge, we need to develop standards and monitor those standards as best as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Halima, for those remarks.
It's Malima. Malima.
Dr. Malima, thank you very much for those remarks. I think Dr. Solomon Beno just left us to go to another meeting. He left in the last few minutes to attend another meeting. And Professor Elijah Malinga Wanda is not with us. Has he joined us?
No.
No. So with those remarks from our panelists, we're going to open up for discussion for members here present and those online. However, just to ask Dr. Martin Ongol, who is the acting executive secretary at the UNCST here in Uganda. Dr. Martin Ongol, do you think that with this COVID-19 pandemic and the much needed requirement for us to get electronic data capture use more and more, and electronic informed consent process getting on board more and more, do you think we need to review some of the guidelines that we have currently? And we also know that our keynote speaker, Dr. Gauri Gopalakrishna, gave us a very good keynote address on research integrity, and she highlighted a large survey from the Netherlands with examples of some practices, the prevalence of different research practices across academics in the Netherlands. And she specifically highlighted publication pressure as something that pushed academics into poor practices. We see that with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have more and more natural products coming on board. Do you think community pressure is going to come on board in our local setting more than academic publication pressure to worsen research integrity in this community? Over to you, Dr. Martin.
Okay, thanks, Professor Pauline. So let me first start by responding on the first one, where now electronic data collection process and informed consent is becoming quite popular because face-to-face contact is now becoming challenging, in the sense that it can actually lead to the spread of COVID. Now, when it comes to the electronic format, first of all, I just look at the way personally I got into informed consent, like over the internet. When you are downloading programs and the like, then you find out that there is this long print, especially some are even 20 pages, and then they say, do you agree, yes or no? And in most instances, we just say agree, because you just want the software. And that kind of culture might even transform into critical aspects like when it comes to informed consent and data collection. So I think this, of course, I think on Tuesday, there were research that was done, and they shared with us data which shows that there is almost no significant difference when it is electronic and versus the face-to-face process. But I think when you talk about it in the African context or in the Ugandan context, where educational levels and levels of understanding are different, I think there are quite some challenges that may be there. And probably in future, we need to do some research to inform how this system works in our country. But I think the best approach we would do actually is just like to, first of all, have an awareness on the informed consent and data collection process. And if possible, this could be done again through Zoom or an online interface to make sure that we don't breach. And I think from regulatory agencies like UNCST, UNRO, and the like, we need to also strengthen the guidelines and the processes for those online systems. And then, of course, there's the issue of publication pressure, that is publish or perish. But I think we are now also getting in a situation where, like, especially when we got into the second wave, the community was very desperate for solutions that could help in alleviation of the COVID-19 problem. And I think that pressure is going to be there. And what I see is that the pressure is even echoed more in the sense that the community somehow wants to hear data which is, or messages which echo the feeling which is already there, that is, we want something that can help us combat this disease. But I think from our side, we need also to make sure that we have to inform the society that we need a very balanced process in judging these herbal products. And of course, NDA has come up with some guidelines for regulations on herbal products. And I think that will help us to moderate the community pressure. And then I think as scientists or regulators and the like, we shouldn't be shy to educate the community, even if we may have a very huge backfire coming towards us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Martin Ongol. I agree with you that community sensitization will be required more and more, especially because the community many times do not read the documents that we put out, the guidelines for research that we put out. You mentioned that NDA is developing guidelines, but the community that receives products from research many times do not read those guidelines. So they need more and more sensitization outside the guidelines. Otherwise, they will not wait for your research to be well conducted in clinical trials to consume the products, and that will force the investigators and innovators towards conducting research that may not follow the national guidelines. Over to you, Dr. Martin Ongol. Sorry, not Martin, to my co-chair, Gerald Dubai.
I have just been, we've just had a bloodless coup here. So the UNCST staff. Yes, thank you, Professor Pauline. Dear colleagues who are online, we do request that you post your questions on the Q&A room so that we're able to pick them up and forward them to the panelists. Yes, but as we wait for those questions, we've had the opportunity of listening to, leaders from the region. And one thing which has come out from the three or four panelists who were able to share with us, especially with regards to the last question, is that there is an agreement that we need to integrate. Where do we start from? Where should the engagement and the conversation begin? And I will start with Dr. Malima.
Excuse me, can you repeat, please? I didn't get that.
Okay. In your presentation and the rest of the panelists, when you are responding to question 4, it became apparent that as a region, we need to move as one. There is need for us to come together and have, regional guidelines, or have guidelines, which are in agreement with one another. Where should the conversation begin? So that by the time we're leaving here, we have an idea of how we should move forward. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think we will have resolutions, I think, towards the end. And I think that is one of the resolutions. We should start now, and we could set the milestones right now and do this online. And then until we manage to come together, we would have quite a substantial kind of document to look at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Malima. Let's hear from Dr. Martin Ongol.
Thank you, Dr. Obai. I think when it comes to the integration process, of course, as Dr. Lima said, the first step is, of course, to compile the resolutions of this meeting, and one of the key ones is actually on the integration. And I think we need to link up with the East African Science and Technology Commission to make sure that probably we start working on the East African standards, maybe for research, for responsible research conduct and integrity. And then, of course, in Uganda, and I think through the European Union, we have received some funding under the European Clinical Trials Partnerships. And through this process, we are trying to develop some guidelines and processes. And I think through such projects, the outcomes of those projects can again be used to strengthen our systems. And when we talk about integration, it should be like at the high policy level or at the level of the councils of science and technology within East Africa. But then we should also bring in other key stakeholders like researchers and academicians, and all those that play a key role in the research integrity ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ongol. There are a few questions which were posted in the chat room, and one of them, actually, I think they do relate to the responses which have so far been given. However, if there is any additional information that any of our panelists would like to provide, please, you're welcome. The first one is, if someone is doing continental research, is there something at AU level for clearance of research protocols without suffering with the national ones? I didn't know that we actually suffer with the UNCST, but thankfully we do have the executive director with us.
Okay. Yeah, so I like the word suffering, but what I can say is that personally in my life, and also if you look at the development of our country, if you don't suffer, you don't get something good and the one that you appreciate. But nevertheless, we are going to make sure that the suffering becomes less and less. We have introduced the electronic submission systems, and we shall be listening to you, and we shall get better and better. But I think in terms of clinical trials and drugs and the like, I think there is a continental guideline which is there. But I think the reason why we get into these national systems and the like is, for instance, in Uganda, I don't know how many languages we have, but I think over 50, and then you find out that you have to translate it into different languages. And we also know that a good thing in one language can be insultive in another language, and then they can say, is this what UNCST approved? So that's why sometimes we go for the suffering process, but we are going to have better surgical means in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ngol. Dr. Malima, any comment on that?
I think I really support what my previous colleague spoke. On the other thing, I think it's high time we in the East African region also make sure that the community actually understands what we're doing. You know, we do research, we do publish, but we never translate them into very simple languages that they would understand. Their contribution in data collection has come up into meaningful interpretation, or even if it's to promote health. And I think in the COVID pandemic, this has given us quite a big reveal that even now that we have vaccines, we have not managed to convince the community that vaccines are good because of the infodemic. And if we're using our languages, our local languages in the translation of all these scientific jargons, we would have been in a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Malima. The next question is equally related, and please, if you think there is something to add to what you've already said, please feel free to do so. Is it possible to work through our line ministries of East Africa to work on research integrity framework for the region? This could ease research collaboration and integration in the region. Dr. Malima.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, maybe Dr. Malima can go first this time.
Yes, thank you. I think that is what we should have started doing. If I remember correctly, I'm sure the rest of the East African countries were involved in the, I think we had a strategy to promote pharmaceutical industry within the region. And we came up with very good documents that is supposed to guide us to be at least independent when it comes to certain drugs, and especially for the tropical diseases, drugs which we are not accessing them because, and then even the big pharma are not even interested in producing anymore because this is solely our problem. So then I think we should have started with the research integrity guidelines or standards for the region. One of the other things that I think that is very important, because everyone has been talking about plagiarism, and we know our generation now is so fast, but it doesn't take the time to internalize these principles or some other things that we're not. Thank you. So I think this is where to start. And I think also one of the challenges, even if you have a research integrity framework, is how you handle misconduct. So that should be key. If we start at the regional level, it will be much easier to operationalize in our countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malima. Professor Tatien Masharabu, please confirm that you can hear me.
Yes, I catch you very well.
Oh, great. Please, I hope you've been able to listen to some of the questions.
Yes.
Yes, and
okay, I agree that we do need a common regional legal framework. For example, there's a need to set up a regional policy for research and integrity. This will allow us to get guidelines to be adapted to local context in conducting research. So there is a need to get a kind of regional ethics policy and even a regional ethics committee. That's all. I thank you.
okay, thank you, Professor Tatien. As we wind down the clock, I would like to hand over again to my co-chair to take us through the next couple of questions. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gerald Opai. So we have just two more questions. One is local, specific to Uganda. The other is can be answered by any member of the panel. So the first one is regarding challenges of predatory journals. And this individual notes that these journals find most of their prey in developing countries, and in particular among the emerging economies where research output is rapidly growing. So what key efforts do East African countries intend to put in place to deal with the problem of predatory journals? Dr. Wanyama, are you there? Would you like to take that on? If Dr. Wanyama is not there, we could hear from Dr. Martin Ongol.
Yeah, thank you. The issue of predatory journals is actually there, and every week in my email, I find a message that, dear Professor Ongol, we have read your distinguished research with this wonderful global impact. What have you? Can you submit? And once you submit today, the following day, it is accepted. And also that's the end of you, depending on which institution you are dealing with. You might apply for a grant, especially in the north, and then when they see that you have 5 of those, it can be very disastrous. I know of a colleague who had over 40 publications, but 15 were predatory, and it took her another 5 years to become a professor. So it was very costly. But I think what we should do, I would say that, number one, don't admit a researcher or a postgraduate student in your entity if you don't have time to mentor the academic in terms of writing, ethics, and responsible conduct. Number two, make sure that actually on a regular basis, even on a monthly basis, this student actually, or researcher or scientist, presents the literature or what he has been working on. And then at the final analysis, you need this time and resources to make sure that internally you have verified that all this that has been done has been handled in a proper manner. And then when you look at what the universities in South Africa have done, they have a list of approved journals. So you only submit to peer-reviewed journals, which are either recognized by Web of Science, Scopus, and the like. And if that journal is not indexed, then you forget about it. And then I think there are 2 excellent indexing agencies, which are almost global, and they have the global standard, that's Copernicus and the like, because also they are fake indexing agencies that might make you be tempted to think that the journals listed in that area are actually authentic. So I think it's a whole system and process, but I think capacity building and the efforts and the time that is needed is quite important. I was in Rwanda. I just located last year in University of Rwanda. We subscribed to Authenticate and we got 16,000 licenses. That means every postgraduate student had a plagiarism, anti-plagiarism software, and it was actually for the whole country. And I think if Professor Mutimura was around, he would testify, because even their National Commission for Science and Technology had that anti-plagiarism software. So we also need to invest on technologies to support the awareness campaigns. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ngol. Dr. Malima and Professor Masharabu, do you have something to add on that regarding the predatory journals?
Thank you. I agree to. Can I speak, or my colleague is going to go first?
Dr. Malima,
Hello?
you can go ahead.
Yeah, I think the previous speaker said it all, but I only have one additional point, which I think it's important for us in the region. You know, we all thrive to get into highly indexed journals, but I think it's high time we strengthen the ones we we have, so they have that quality standard. And then I think we can try it and channel whoever we're mentoring and tutoring to publish in those index journals within our region, because it's also getting to be expensive. For the countries in the region that have actually been declared to be middle income, high middle income, whether it's lower, you now have to pay about $2,000 or more, and that's going to be very costly for us because no one will get promoted. We do not have resources enough to do that, but we also need to have the scientific merit recognition. So then I think also we need to work on how to strengthen juniors within our region. They get the necessary standards, and then we can move on with our science. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malima. Professor Masharabu?
Yes, the same with our colleagues also. Every day we are receiving requests from predatory journals, and in that regard, what should we do? I do think that we should avail the list of predatory journals through our communication channels in universities, in research institutions, and also we should avail the list of accepted ones in order to avoid that our researchers lose, I mean the data. So it's a big challenge, but the key idea is to, is to avoid those predatory journals to our students, to our researchers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Masharabu and the rest of the panelists. I'm going to hand over to our chair, Dr. Gerald Obai, to give a vote of thanks to the panelists. But before I do that, there's one more question to Dr. Martin Ongol. And the question is, can research institutions now form institutional animal care and user committees at different institutions? And after reading that question, I'd like to bring you all to the attention on the program, the last page of the program. We shall have the launch of the national guidelines of use of animals in research and teaching. So please attend that session in big numbers. I now hand over to Dr. Martin Ongol to give us an answer to that question. And then Dr. Gerald Obai will close the session. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Prof. Pauline. So I think at the moment now, since we have launched the guidelines for use of animals in research, it's okay for now institutions to form the committees in charge of use of animals and handling animals for research. But I think we are still on the back foot at the moment, in the sense that we are trying to work on the next set of documents that is on the monitoring standards and the management standards, whereby if we come to check the institution, there's a clear criteria where we can check against to see whether you have complied or not. But I think in 2 months, we should be there. And there was a second bit of question.
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ngol, for that last, responding to that last question. We do have 1 minute, but I would like to give Dr. Cloud 45 seconds of the 1 minute. There is a question that he would like to respond to. And I'm happy that Dr. Okwari is also here. The question reads, it's unfortunate that 95% of research conducted in Uganda is useless, according to UNRO director. How can this figure be reversed to have 5% useless research? What is the role of government in ensuring that research is 95% useful, bearing in mind that nearly all research is foreign funded and collaborative? Claude, you had indicated you wanted to write live.
Yes.
Yes, Dr. Kware. Please use the next 90 seconds to respond to that.
Thank you so much for I'm happy that when I raised the issue of 90%. If you look at all research from eternity, you'll only find that only 5% of that research has actually been helpful to mankind. A lot of what is actually done is just put under the carpet. That's what I'm not saying that the research is not good, but of the 100 researches that take place, if you look at the literature, only about 2 to 5% actually make a difference in the lives of. So really what we are doing in research, we are just gambling, as it were. We try, fail. At the end, we always come out with something. What I'm saying is that what you're doing is wrong. No, I'm saying that over 100 cases, 100 research findings, only 5%, less than 5% actually have been translated into knowledge, policy, and also other positive things. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kware.
And I can give you a website for this because I was actually reviewing I was actually examining students, and this was one of the questions I was trying to give them. So much research is going on. How much of that actually is translated into policy and also innovations? Over.
Thank you, Dr. Kware. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to take this opportunity to thank our wonderful panelists for sharing with us. First of all, they shared with us what is happening in their respective countries, and then later on made suggestions on how we can bring all this together. So I'd like to thank you very much, Dr. Martin Patrick Ongol, Professor Tatien Masharabu from Burundi, Mr. Boniface Wekesa Wanyama from Kenya, Dr. Adija Malimu from Tanzania, Dr. Solomon Beno from Ethiopia. It's unfortunate that we were not able to have Dr. Eugene Mutimura and Professor Elijah Malinga. We thank you so much, our wonderful panelists. I can't forget to thank all the wonderful participants, both here physically present and those online. And yes, to the chairs, and most especially to my colleague, Professor Pauline Biachika. Thank you so much for a wonderfully moderated session. I thank you all. Please, I would like to invite the APC chair in case there are any announcements before we take a short break. Thank you, and over to you, Chair, Professor Gertrude Chiwanuka.
Yes, thank you very much, our moderators, and I also want to thank our dear panelists. Thank you very much, the online participants and those who are here physically. So we are going to break off for about 13 minutes for health break. Those of you who are joining in online, please stay. We still have a package for you. We're going to run some videos which are related to the theme of our 11th ANREC. Please stay tuned, but you can grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee. And we shall be resuming in the next 12, 13 minutes. Thank you very much.
So, what do you want to do tonight? Want to meet up around 7 and grab some dinner?
No can do. We are supposed to get 50 people to fill out these surveys. I'm in this group with like 3 other people. I have no idea how they did it, but they're done with theirs and I'm waiting on me for mine. This project is ridiculous. Where am I supposed to find these people? I don't even know 50 people on this campus. Crazy.
Dude, what are you doing? Are you filling those things out yourself?
What's the big deal? No one will ever know or care.
What's going on? Cho, are you cheating?
Research integrity, to me, is a system to ensure the credibility of your research results, and also a system to provide confidence to people that you haven't exploited anybody or unduly exploited any ecosystem as part of the research.
I think research integrity has a couple of layers for me. Firstly, I think the integrity of the research depends on data collection, and it has to be rigorous and covered by an ethical procedure. So I think that's probably the first thing, that you need to be aware of the fact that if you're dealing with other human beings, that you should be respecting and mindful of, and there must be some due regard for the opinions of other people. And secondly, the rigor and the research integrity has to then be in the analysis of that data.
Research integrity for me is mainly about being truthful to my roots, to my culture, but also being ethically responsible for the way that you present your findings.
Research integrity, to me, I guess, is fundamentally about trust, and it's 2 different types of trust in a way. First is the trust between researchers and non-researchers in terms of ensuring that what we're doing in terms of the methods that we use, they're the most robust, they're the most appropriate, the data analysis that we use are the most appropriate, and we can have faith in those, that we're actually doing things and that the answers that we're finding make sense in the context of the questions that we're asking. But there's also that trust that the researchers have themselves to make sure that they are actually doing what they think that they're doing.
Research integrity to me, when you think about the word integrity, so I have a law background, and I think, you know, of integrity as something which it's doing the right thing, in some way, you know, doing the good thing, the right thing, the best thing for individuals who are involved in the research.
Research integrity to me means honesty and reliability. So when I'm collecting my data and reporting on it, I'm always honest in that I don't change the results or the findings. And I think reliability, especially say with qualitative data analysis, you might do coding and you need to check that other people would interpret the coding the same way. So you need to do that as part of your study. But the other thing too is when you're finished your data analysis and your findings, someone else can then go and use your data and your coding and find the same sorts of results.
I think research integrity signifies to me research that is reproducible, replicable, research that scholars are going to want to look at, read about, trust in your results, and maybe even replicate themselves.
Research integrity is about data collection, the analysis of data, and also how we interpret the data. It needs to be very honest, and it needs to be very clear in all the stages of research.
I think for me, it's really important to have a holistic understanding of research integrity. So it applies to our research conduct, our research practice within projects, but equally it applies to how we hold ourselves as professionals, how we operate, our relationships with other colleagues, the way in which we give feedback on reviews, for proposals, for papers that we're reading and so on.
It was not the finest hour for clinical research at this institution. An audit of a melanoma trial uncovered several deviations from protocol. Suspicions of falsification and fabrication prompted the IRB to notify the hospital-affiliated research integrity officer. As IRB chair, I met with the Rio myself. We think they just made up a lot of their data.
Well, yeah. All of the subjects' BU and creatinine numbers are the same here.
Plus, there's a subject who apparently dropped out that they kept recording labs for. There were also the questionable premature deaths of 2 subjects and a lawsuit by another participant's family. An internal investigation was initiated, but that was just the beginning of the fallout. Key trial figures were suspended, namely the investigator and the clinical research coordinator. And the president of the hospital was left to deal with calls from the media, threats of donors withdrawing millions in research endowments, and concerns from hospital counsel over liability. How did this happen? Along the way, there were people involved with this study who didn't follow protocol, turned a blind eye to misconduct, didn't effectively practice oversight, and falsified or fabricated data. But you know what? It didn't really happen. I mean, it did, but it didn't. You see, in this movie, unlike real life, you get to go back in time. You can become an investigator, a clinical research coordinator, a research assistant, and an institutional review board chair. You get the chance to enter an alternate reality as any of these characters, walk in their shoes, experience their lives, and figure out how to make the ethical decisions that advance integrity in research. It's up to you to figure out how.
George, let me show you something. Nice job.
Oh, thanks.
Couldn't have done it without all of your hard work.
I appreciate that. It means
Congratulations.
a lot. Thanks a lot.
How's your summer?
Oh, it's going great.
Yeah.
Didn't you work on that project with Dr. Raming? How come your name isn't on there as an author?
Yeah, that's the graph I generated. All that work, and my name is nowhere. Should I say something?
Okay. Mr. Ross, researchers from another university are questioning some of the recent high-profile findings from one of your labs. Do you have any?
No, I'm sorry. I can't. You'll have to direct these questions to our general counsel.
But Mr. Ross.
Sorry, I have a meeting. A scientist from a competing lab decided to go public with suspicions that some very celebrated research from our university had been falsified.
Promising research that it was hoped might lead to breakthroughs in the treatment of diabetes might not be all it first appeared to be. Paula Williams has the story.
We don't hear much about the world of test tubes and lab rats until there's a major breakthrough with major public health implications. Add federal dollars and accusations of fraud to the equation, and you have a potentially explosive story.
I was very interested in this paper. My lab's been doing very similar work.
But it blew up pretty quickly.
A preliminary assessment indicates there are grounds for moving forward and looking into all the research with which this individual is involved.
But
we've decided that further investigation is required to determine whether research misconduct has occurred.
it turned out badly.
9 months after allegations of research misconduct, a young scientist here who seemed to have a bright future ahead of him has finally admitted to falsifying his research.
The investigation turned up multiple instances of research misconduct by this individual over the course of a couple of years. Along the way, there were people in the lab who had questions but didn't speak up. There were
Is it true the McCrary family is withdrawing their commitment to establish a $30 million research endowment for your university?
Well, yes, as you know, they made that announcement today. It just turned into the proverbial perfect storm.
After findings of professional misconduct and with the mounting pressure of widespread bad publicity and more unhappy donors threatening to pull their funding, the principal investigator from this troubled lab, who had been placed on probation, has finally been dismissed.
The PI was let go, his lab was shut down, postdocs, grad students, lab techs, all scrambling to find a new place to continue their work, many while dealing with the stigma that comes from a tainted lab. But you know what? It didn't really happen. Oh, I mean, it did, but it didn't. Because with this program, unlike real life, you get to go back in time. You can become a grad student, a postdoc, a PI, or a research integrity officer. You get a chance to enter an alternate reality as any of these characters, walk in their shoes, experience their lives, and practice making the choices that will advance the integrity in research. This outcome can be avoided. It's up to you to figure out how.
It was not the finest hour for clinical research at this institution. An audit of a melanoma trial uncovered several deviations from protocol. Suspicions of falsification and fabrication prompted the IRB to notify the hospital-affiliated research integrity officer. As IRB chair, I met with the Rio myself. We think they just made up a lot of their data.
Well, yeah, all of the subjects' BU and creatinine numbers are the same here.
Plus, there's a subject who apparently dropped out, but they kept recording labs for. There were also the questionable premature deaths of 2 subjects and a lawsuit by another participant's family. An internal investigation was initiated, but that was just the beginning of the fallout. Key trial figures were suspended, namely the investigator and the clinical research coordinator. And the president of the hospital was left to deal with calls from the media, threats of donors withdrawing millions in research endowments, and concerns from hospital counsel over liability. How did this happen? Along the way, there were people involved with this study who didn't follow protocol, turned a blind eye to misconduct, didn't effectively practice oversight, and falsified or fabricated data. But you know what? It didn't really happen. I mean, it did, but it didn't. You see, in this movie, unlike real life, you get to go back in time. You can become an investigator, a clinical research coordinator, a research assistant, and an institutional review board chair. You get the chance to enter an alternate reality as any of these characters, walk in their shoes, experience their lives, and figure out how to make the ethical decisions that advance integrity in research. It's up to you to figure out how.
Hello, is this the IRB office?
Yes, how may I help you?
I submitted an application last week and I am here to pick up my approval documents.
Was it a new application that you submitted through the first system?
Yes, I submitted it last week and I requested that it have expedited review.
Can you tell me the IRB number?
I don't know the IRB number. I submitted it last week.
What is your name, sir?
I am Dr. Ito Anabwani Kandifulu.
Can you spell that for me?
Yes, it is spelled with an I, just the way it sounds.
Sir, did you receive an email telling you that your study was going to be reviewed this week? Or that it has been approved?
No, but I submitted it last week and requested that it have expedited review as a fast-track study. So it should be done by now. We plan to start the study tomorrow, so I need the documents.
Sir, If it was just submitted last week, it probably has not been reviewed by the IRB yet.
But my work is very important. I am testing new
Hello, members. I want to welcome you to this session.
Clearly, we are international, right? Yeah, I can't wait to test those keys.
Okay, members, I want to welcome everybody here physically and online to
Sandwich National Schools Championship. Today is the grand finale. And to give you a bit of a picture, we have moved to more than 1,000 schools, influenced the lives of more than 16,000 students. The teachers are also starting their own projects. You hear all about it. To our partners who have made this possible, thank you so much. We are now live on NBS television. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with me the Chief Executive, Stanbic Bank, Andrew.
Now, what's wrong with those guys? They are failing to work.
Okay, sorry about that little technical glitch. I want to once again welcome everybody to this session. Those who are attending here physically and those who are following the proceedings online, you are all very welcome. So without wasting time, I will introduce myself, and then my colleague will introduce himself, and then later we'll introduce our speaker, and then our next speaker will be introduced, my co-chair. My name is Dr. John Barugahare, College of Humanities and Social Sciences, Makerere University. And my colleague here will introduce himself as well.
Okay, thank you so much, participants. I'm Dr. Lawrence Mugisha from College of Veterinary Medicine, Animal Resources and Biosecurity, Makerere University. We are glad to be here and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Professor Lawrence. So the session we are in now is called Ethical Issues in Animal and Natural Products Research. In this session, we are going to have two speakers, and one of them here is called Dr. Barbara Mugwanya Zawede, sorry. Dr. Barbara is a director of research, National Research Organization, Mukono Zonal Agricultural Research and Development Institute. And she's a former vice chairperson, Uganda Biotechnology and Biosafety Consortium. and coordinator, Uganda Biosciences Information Center, and so many other things. But among all those other things, she's currently a chairperson for the Naro Institute Biosafety Committee, a member of the Naro Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, and a delegate to the International Convention on Biodiversity. So she would be talking to us about a topic on global perspectives, a global perspective on research integrity in natural product research and development. And she will focus more on Uganda as her case. So Barbara, you are very welcome to give your talk, and feel free to say something more about yourself if you think I've left something more important that you don't want your audience to miss about you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think you have done a very good job of introducing me. I'd like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to present and to share. I have to let you know that preparing for this presentation, I had to learn a lot as I was preparing. And my presentation is going to be on sharing what is happening in other parts of the world and the lessons we can learn as Uganda from what is happening in other parts of the world. So my presentation will look at what is a natural product, the evolution of research and development in relation to natural products, some of the integrity issues in relation to research and development of natural products. I'll share some examples of integrity issues in natural production research and development. I'll share some examples of good integrity practices in research and development for natural products. Then I'll end by sharing some of the lessons that I think we can learn as a country. So natural products are defined as the substances that are produced from various natural things, including plants, bacteria, fungi, marine organisms, and animals. And in many cases, we look at botanical products, animal products, probiotics, refined products, as well as placebos. And you find that a number of natural products have been developed. We have the medical or natural products and drugs discovery. And we see that right now we have a herbal medicine market that is estimated at 98 billion US dollars as of 2020. And it is estimated that by the 2028, we shall have this market at over 390 billion US dollars. So as a country, we need to benefit from that. Then we have the cosmetics market. We have a number of natural products for the cosmetic market. For example, we have the natural skin care, we have the natural body lotions, we have the natural hair care, and even we have actual products that are natural products. For example, I have a picture there showing braids that have been developed from banana fiber. And when you look at this market, it's also a very big market. Right now, we have a market of over 36 billion US dollars as of 2019. And it's estimated that by 2027, it will be all the way to 54 billion billion US dollars. So again, as a country, we need to see how we can benefit from this big global market. And because of the increasing global market, there is also an increase in the evolution of research and development in relation to natural products. When you look at the 1940s to 60s or 70s, which is considered as the second industrial revolution, a lot of focus was related to compound structure elucidations. And here the technologies that were being used are less advanced to what we have now. We had the UV, we had the radioisotopes and chromatography. Then as we went on in the third industrial revolution, we started synthesizing compounds, and we started even doing animal tests and also cell cultures and other related research methods. And then we advanced the technologies that we were using, including the HPLC, the mass spectrometry, to mention a few. By the fourth industrial revolution, where we are right now, we have started computer simulations, what is considered as in silico assessments. We are looking at metabolomics. We are looking at synthetic biology and a lot of other biotechnologies that are related to advancing natural products. And so we are looking at artificial intelligence. We are looking at F3D printing and all these things. So we are seeing that over the years, research in natural products is advancing, and it's advancing because we need to confront some of the increasing life-threatening challenges, some of which are natural, like climate change, but others are lifestyle-induced. We see that we have changed the way we eat, so we are now observing obesity, increased heart problems, and all these things. And then there is also the increasing desire for functional foods. And what do I mean by functional foods? Foods that are not only nutritional, but they also contribute to other health benefits. And here I'll give an example of avocado. We are always being told that if you eat avocado, it helps to lower your cholesterol levels. So products like that, people are increasingly getting interested. But we are also seeing that there is an increase in depletion of genetic resources for natural products in different parts of the world. So many parts of the world are now looking at Africa and Asia as the places to go to get natural products. And this makes us have to increase our interest in how we handle partners that are coming in to utilize our natural products. A number of integrity issues have been identified in relation to natural product research and development. And the common ones include ownership issues. Who owns the natural product? Other cases, intellectual property management issues. And here we see a lot of issues of biopiracy, where the owners of the technologies or the owners of the natural product are not benefiting from the biodiversity because of intellectual property management issues. And again, they are not even benefiting or even having access to what used to be theirs. Now they can't access it because of issues of IP. Then we have issues of partnerships. Many cases, there are challenges in relation to how do the inventors relate with the private sector, with multinationals. So these are challenges that are being raised or faced in natural product development. Then also disclosure. Sometimes it's not very clear what exactly in the natural product is the active ingredient. And therefore, it becomes very difficult when it comes to bioprospecting and also development of the product. So there are a number of other scientific integrity issues that have been identified. And I have here an image to show some of them, including issues of ethical behavior, as we see recently in relation to biotechnology research.
Barbara, excuse me a bit. I'll take this opportunity to announce to our members present here, physically and those online, including our TV audience, that we are now live on NBS TV. And for that reason, I request that we try to minimize our movements within the room, just not to disrupt, the flow of the picture. Thank you very much, and proceed with your presentation, Barbara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Now I'm going to start sharing some of the examples of integrity issues that have been reported globally in relation to natural product development. The first case I was able to find was related to the Battle Creek Sanitarium case in the US, which was in the 19th and 20th century. And this one relates to the current Kellogg company. So there was a venture between John and William Kellogg, who started developing cereals as food. But with time, they terminated their venture. And this was because William decided to change the processing of the cereal by adding sugar. When they were starting out, it was meant to be a health product. But then they started to add sugar, which brought a methodology violation and resulted in termination of the partnership. But also, to the same case, William Kellogg violated the confidential business information principle by sharing some of the valuable information about how they process the cereal. And then someone called C.W. Post also established what is currently known as General Foods, using the intellectual property he got from William Kellogg. And therefore, Post was accused of stealing intellectual property, and that became a court case. Then we have the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of the US in the 1994. Here we see a lot of politics playing in research. While a number of research and scientific associations were against some of the provisions of this act, it still passed, and it resulted in allowing dietary supplements to be defined as food. And also, it is now being used by a number of manufacturers to claim some effects of the dietary supplements that have not been verified. And so this creates the issue of role of politics, role of marketing claims, and also it brings about safety issues in relation to the subjects, because the claims sometimes are not true. Then we have the Sugar Research Foundation of 1960s to 70s. Here, the sugar factory funded a lot of research. And what was observed over time was that actually, when the research was being conducted, because of the agenda of the source of funding, they downplayed the negative effects of sucrose, including on the teeth. So people consumed a lot of the products without knowing that it was actually having an effect on their health. And that is because of source of funding, resulting in fabrication and falsification of the methods and the results. Then we have our recent COVID-Dex issue in Uganda. And here what we learn is the issue of IP, or intellectual property battles, between university and the private sector, and also learning that because we are a low or least developing country, we may not be able to patent what we consider as innovations in relation to pharmaceuticals. And so we have the advantage that because of the TRIPS, we are able to get drugs at very good prices for different diseases, but we lose the opportunity to protect some of our intellectual property. So there are a number of causes of misconduct, many of which have been mentioned by the previous speakers, including issues of limited resources, agenda for the source of funding, hyper competition in research systems. I have to be the first to publish. I have to be the first to produce the product. We have publication pressure, which was already mentioned, pressure to solve emerging issues, like in the case of COVID-19, institutional policies where people are promoted or they are appointed depending on number of publications, number of inventions. So people are under pressure to publish, to invent because of that. Then there is sometimes limited supervision and mentoring, and I think this was emphasized in the previous talk, and also limited knowledge on the approval and regulatory process that would help with good bioprospecting practices. So some of these have actually created the misconducts that have been reported. But we also have some good examples. But before I go to the good examples, I have a case which I ended up putting here. It should have been in the previous one. The Hoodie case in South Africa that involved the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research of South Africa and the San people. Many of us know the San people from the Gods Must Be Crazy movie, the Kalahari Desert. So these communities have what is called a cactus that is known as, that has appetite suppressant properties. And this is now being used, I don't want to use the word exploited, but it's being used to address issues of obesity. Initially, the South African Council for Scientific and Industrial Research patented this technology, or this, they isolated the molecule and then they patented the molecule. At this point, this was raised as a biopiracy issue because it protected, it did not allow the Kalahari people to utilize their technology anymore. Then this was licensed to a UK phytopharm company, and later Pfizer was licensed to this technology. And at that point, the Kalahari people or the San people were no longer able to use the plant because it was a protected plant for the same reason, for the suppression of appetite. And so this created a lot of havoc in South Africa. And in 2003, they decided to have an access and benefit sharing agreement between the San people and the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. However, what we learned from this is that while this was done, and it was a good thing because then the Kalahari people or the San people now started benefiting from the royalties that the council was getting and the other incomes the council were getting, these people could not benefit directly from the multinationals. So what we learned from here, we have to be very careful about the agreements we make to make sure that they are comprehensive. But also, it did not give the San people the opportunity to utilize this same product for the other non-patented medical benefits. They could not utilize that. And so this created a very big challenge. And so we have to learn as we do agreements in relation to access and benefit sharing for natural products, that as we make these agreements, we ensure that there is capacity building, both at infrastructural and at developmental level for the communities that actually own these technologies. We also have to recognize that sometimes we have to be very careful when we are writing and negotiating linear agreements. And I think this is one of the reasons that we now have the Nagoya Protocol on access to genetic resources, fair and equitable sharing of benefits. Because here we are looking at how do the communities benefit from their genetic resources? How do they benefit from their traditional knowledge? And these are very critical if we want to conserve biological diversity and also ensure that there is sustainable use of the different components of our natural products. So we have to learn that agreements are very critical and negotiations are very critical. We need to develop capacity to have the right people on the table. We have the artemisinin, I never managed to pronounce that right, in China, which was an anti-malarial drug. This is a good example because there was a lot of good bioprospecting done. A lot of work was actually done on this. A lot of traditional recipes were developed, over 2,000. Over 300 tests were done on mice before they allowed this technology. However, when they were doing this, the Chinese people were very smart. They took very long to actually publicize their product until they perfected it, until they were able to protect it. Then they shared it with us. So while this product and the work started in 1967, it was only brought to private sector in 2006 after it had been protected. And in 2015,
Barbara, can you try to talk within the next 5 minutes?
Yes, please.
Summarize the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. So then in 2015, the scientist was able to be rewarded with a Nobel Prize for this product. And this product is similar to a number of other cases that we have. For example, the insulin case, which is used to address diabetes, and also the vitamin B12 case that addresses anemia. Then we have the Moroccan angana tree, which is for cosmetic and skin care. Again, here, what happened is the indigenous people are benefiting from the technology. And also the companies involved are ensuring that there is environmental conservation of the product so that the genetic resource continues to produce and it is not exhausted. So that is something we also have to learn, that we do not overexploit the natural product. Then we have the kakadu plum in Australia for the Aborigines. Again, here, the decision was actually made that local community private sector are the ones who own and use this natural product for development of the communities. What we learn is that there are different ways we can actually protect our intellectual property in natural product research and development. We can use breeders' rights, where you identify a variety or you improve a variety and then you protect it as a breeder's variety. And then they can earn from licensing and from royalties that are related to the technology. Then we have the patents. Patents can be for the product, but also for the method. We see that there are starches that have been patented, molecules of starches that have been patented from the products of potato, of maize, and this is something that we can also do. But based on what I know, in Uganda, we are not allowed to patent natural products, but we can patent the processes. So we can look at the methods. How do we process these products and we patent them? Then there is licensing, where you give a license to the non-developer or innovator, and they use it, like involving private sector to increase the use. Then the trademark issue, where you patent a brand. And here the example is KFC. Many people are benefiting a lot because they have branded their products as KFC products. So we can also use that. Then there is the issue of copyrights. You can actually put a copyright on the process that you're using. You can put a copyright on the data. You can use a copyright even on your laboratory notes. And that way you can actually benefit from your research. However, for this to work, we need to have very strong regulatory, and we need to make sure that these regulatory systems ensure that there is no infringement on the IPs. Otherwise, the regulatory systems then should provide the litigation methods in case of IP infringements. Here, I want to give the example of, in relation to agriculture. As a country, we developed the Plant Variety Protection Act, which is supposed to protect plant breeders. However, this act has not up to today been operationalized because we do not yet have approved regulatory systems. And because of that, scientists are actually very demotivated. And that's why we see we are not getting as much work done as we could if scientists could see the benefits coming out of their efforts. So what are the lessons to Uganda? As we develop natural products, we need to always ensure that there is environmental management to ensure resource sustainability. We need to invest in research. But beyond research, we need to invest in meta-research to ensure that there is replicability, there is verification of the research that has been done. And also someone mentioned the fact that in many cases, research does not result in a contribution to policy and society. But it's because one person does this, they leave it there, another person comes and does something completely different. Yet if they could all be building onto one product, it would help a lot to result in a big output or outcome that would then have an effect on society and on policy. We need to always involve the intellectual or indigenous knowledge custodians in access and benefit sharing, but also in research. We need to ensure that as we do all the work, there are multidisciplinary collaborations, scientists working with communication, working with social scientists, working with economists to ensure that the natural products come to fruition. We need to ensure intellectual property management because this is the biggest challenge in relation to natural products development. Private sector involvement is very critical from the start. It's good, but of course you always remember to protect the confidential business information. As a country, we need to continue building and developing guidelines and putting in place research integrity committees. I'm glad that today we are going to launch a guideline that is going to help operationalize some of the committees, some of which are existing and some of which have been pending because we did not have guidelines. But as we do this, we have to remember that after we've done that, we need to develop the capacity of these committee members, but also of the scientists and the users and the regulators to ensure that there is research, integrity compliance, and communication. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barbara, for that presentation. And for emphasis, I need to say that the truth is that globally, herbs or other natural products are widely used. And we know them as being efficacious, but that does not guarantee the benefit-risk ratio that they have. So for that reason, in order to be sure about what, the extent to which they are efficacious and to understand their benefit and risk ratio, we need to conduct research. And from her presentation, we need to be careful about to conduct research because there is a lot at stake. First of all, if we don't take seriously issues of intellectual property, especially if this research is sort of international collaborative research, we may end up lose everything. That's one. Secondly, if we do not ensure rigorous methods, then whatever we come up as the findings of the studies may be regarded as less credible, and therefore that may limit the use of such products, not only locally, but internationally. So thank you very much, Barbara, for that presentation. We cannot say enough about the subject, but now moving forward, I'm going to ask my co-chair to introduce our next speaker, who is going to talk to us about the subject that will be introduced by him. Thank you very much, Barbara, and over to you, Professor Lawrence Mugisha.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning once, our dear participants, both virtual and physical here. We are going to receive the second paper for this session, and allow me to introduce our speaker for this session. Our speaker is going to be talking to us on the ethical issues for life sciences and research involving animals in research as research subjects. And our speaker for this session is Associate Professor Davis Lewis, who is going to be speaking to us from UK. David is a bioethics, is a pharmacologist and a bioethics at the University of Leeds in UK. and he has over 35 years of experience of the use of animals in research, and he has been internationally recognized as an expert in education and promotion and professional education in research animal sciences, welfare, and ethics. And for that matter, he has received several international recognition awards in this field of animal ethics research and teaching. Allow me to invite Dr. Davis Lewis, who is speaking to us from UK, to give us his presentation. Thank you so much. Davis, you are most welcome.
Thank you very much, Lawrence, and thank you very much for your kind invitation. So, as Lawrence said, ethical issues for life sciences and research involving animals as research subjects. So just a background, as I said, Lawrence said, I've been doing animal research myself for 40 years now. So I'm based in Leeds, which is in Northern England. And my early research, my PhD and subsequent research was using predominantly rats to investigate the neurophysiology and neuropharmacology of the brain's control of the cardiovascular and respiratory systems. About 12 to 15 years ago, I moved from research to more delivering education and professional education in research animal sciences and ethics. So I chair the British Pharmacological Society's Animal Welfare and In Vivo Pharmacology Committee. I also chair the International Union of Pharmacology's ISOP initiative, which means I go around the emerging world, working with colleagues, in India, China, and across Africa, delivering courses, professional education courses in partnership with them in research animal sciences and ethics. And most recently, Lawrence and I delivered a session or a course on research animal ethics at his own university a few weeks ago. So animal research can involve very strong emotions, and this evidence is predominantly from the UK, but it is actually happening across the world. So people can be harassed, even sort of attacked for being engaged in animal research. There have been research facilities that have been burnt down. This is from Milan, where they broke in and liberated animals, mixed the genetically altered animals up, and actually put the research back 5 years. And even to the extent of grave robbing, digging up somebody's body. In this case, it was the body of a grandmother whose grandson was involved in breeding animals for research. Particularly prevalent in the 90s and early 2000s in the UK, to the extent that we actually have a national law now that makes it a criminal offence to harass or attack anybody involved in animal experimentation. Now, if we think about animal research, there's a whole different range of stakeholders and opinions. So we have the public, we have patients and patient advocacy groups, we have clinicians, science and scientists, individual researchers, because animal research is an emotive topic. Not everybody can actually undertake it. Animal care colleagues, vets, animal welfare organizations, animal rights activists, governments, institutions, people who are financially dependent on animals, so farmers, wildlife parks, etc. And except for animal rights activists, there's no direct yes or no. Most people are a halfway house. They're conditional acceptors. So, for example, the UK government does a survey every couple of years asking the public's opinions of animal research. 50% at the moment agree with it. That goes up to 68% of what we call conditional acceptors. Those who will only accept animal research for medical but not scientific purposes. Those who will accept animal research where we've minimized the harms to the experimental animal. Opinions can change over time. So, for example, when I started doing animal research 40 years ago, I didn't really think about the animal. Now I very much turned into an abolitionist, that if possible, I would like to abolish the use of animals in research. Probably beyond my lifetime, but that's the direction of travel I'm going with. People's opinions can be influenced by time, by events. So, for example, patient is more likely to agree with it if they're suffering from a life-threatening disease and need an instant cure. Different cultures have different views on animal experiments, different religions. Some people are more accepting of research on particular species, so lower order species compared to primates, for example. The experimental approach we use, is it freely moving animals? Is it anesthetized animals? Is it how much harm is it actually causing to that animal? And perhaps public opinion as well. So huge range of opinions. And, we've been doing animal research since 3 BC, so 3 centuries before Christ. So, and there's been a whole range of different philosophical perspectives, philosophers' perspectives on that. So we have virtue ethics, Kant, Aristotle's thoughts. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not going to try and replicate their ideas or thoughts. A few years ago, the Office of Bioethics in the UK brought together different sectors of the community to discuss animal experimentation, and they really sort of grouped them into 4 different perspectives. The anything goes view, that animal research produces outputs of value, and therefore there's no need for any further ethical justification. The on balance justification view that we are causing harms, but we are getting benefits from it, so it's morally justified if we take reasonable steps to minimize the cost of the animal. The moral dilemma view that we're always going to be harming somebody, so if we don't do it, we're going to be causing harms to humans by not creating new medicines. If we do it, we're going to be using animals and creating harms, potentially death to those animals. And the abolitionist view that there is no justification whatsoever causing harms to animals. Now, I am a Western individual. I'm a male scientist, middle-aged. And so what I'm going to talk to you really is my perspective. I can't even hope to give different perspectives from different cultures, different societies, etc. So my thoughts are that we really have to think about the competing animal and human interests. On one hand, we're getting benefits for humans, we live in medicines, we're curing disease, etc., but we're causing harms to animals. Some of our medicines might actually cure diseases in those animals, so it's causing harms to animals to benefit other animals. Do we have human rights? If so, do animals have rights as well? Are animals' rights the same as human rights, or are we sort of is there a hierarchy, that humans come above animals? Do animals have moral status? We think about legislation, animal welfare legislation across the world. We actually have a hierarchy within that in most legislations. That is more, we're being forced to use particular species, rats and mice compared to primates, and that's based on our lack of understanding really of animal sentience, a belief that we should, it's okay to do it on animals that we think, perceive pain less. But for me, the principal actors, forget the public, forget society, forget clinicians, the principal actors, the ones that we really have to think about are the research animals. And we use everything across the world. So we can use single-celled protozoa, water fleas, all the way through invertebrates, fish, rats and mice. Then we can move into farm animals, wild animals, so non-human primates, wolves, etc. Key thing for me is that when we think about research involving humans, research involving animals, in humans, particularly with adults, it's informed consent. Animals cannot give us consent. Therefore, it is morally charging us to minimize the harms to those animals, to not use them if we can actually get around it. So thinking about it from my perspective as a research animal scientist, somebody who has been doing animal research for 40 years, it is vivisection. It's a practice of performing operations on live animals for the purposes of experimentation or scientific research. So we're working on living beings we're causing harm to those living beings, probably in most cases causing death as well. So in my mind, that raises some fundamental questions. Is it use of animals necessary? Could we achieve the same scientific outcomes using other approaches? Is all scientific knowledge worthwhile? You know, do we need another paracetamol versus an anti-cancer treatment? What would actually happen if we didn't do that particular study on our animal? Do we need that knowledge? If we have to use an animal, can we do things differently to minimize the harms to that animal and maximize the benefits, not only to society, to humans, but to animals themselves? Who actually benefits? Is it a very small section of the population that's having minimal benefits, you know, quality of life gets better, or is it actually a huge section of population that's having massive benefits, saving lives? Are all the benefits we think realizable, and when? So for example, we might be investigating the function of a protein. We might say that the benefit in 20 years' time might be the development of a new treatment for a brain disorder, but it's not tangible. It's a long time off. You know, it's probably not going to occur. So we've got to think about short-term versus long-term benefits. Do the benefits always have to outweigh the harms? Are there certain circumstances where, you know, it's causing such severe, you know, pain, disability, etc., in a very small group of individuals that we can, you know, cause substantial harms to that very small, you know, substantial harms to a large number of animals to produce a benefit for, you know, a few individuals. That's a benefit with regard to knowledge and understanding. But can we think about other benefits? Could we think about, you know, an economic benefit? Is that a justifiable benefit? Or what about just promoting, you know, enhancing my career? So that's my perspective on, you know, some of the questions ethical questions we have to think about as, you know, research animal scientists. But also then we take it on, you know, one stage further about your own personal obligations and values. So as a scientist, you might accept that, yes, we're going to use them, we're going to cause harms, but maybe see that as a necessary evil. But what about if you are also involved in experimentation, but coming from a different perspective? So you are a vet. Your professional obligation is not to cause harm to animals, but you know, to minimize those harms, but you are physically causing harms to them. There have been a number of codes of conduct created globally to think about ethical codes of conduct for animal research. So the 3 R's and the 5 F's. Talk about those in a minute, but is it sufficient for us to comply with those codes of conduct, or should we go, you know, much further than that? So for me, animal research is a privilege. If we do animal experimentation, we've got to minimize harms to our experimental animals. So 5 freedoms were brought in 1965. They were brought in for dairy cattle, but they can actually be applied to other forms of research, animal, wildlife, etc. So freedom from hunger or thirst, so providing access to fresh water and an appropriate diet. Freedom from discomfort, so appropriate environment, enclosure, etc., and a resting area, so a safe space. Freedom from pain, injury, or disease. So again, this is with research animals, this is what the hardest one to achieve. You know, we are by necessity causing pain, injury, or disease. But what we can do is put in measures to minimize that, to look at, you know, putting welfare interventions, etc., that are going to minimize that harm. Freedom to express most normal behaviors, so providing appropriate space, facilities, company, companion animals, etc. And freedom from fear and distress by ensuring the conditions and treatment is such that we minimize mental suffering. So as I said, that was designed for dairy cattle, I mean, normal sort of farming, but it is applicable to research animals. The one specifically for, or the code specifically for laboratory animals was the principles of humane experimental technique. So it was introduced in the late 1950s by two British philosophers, Russell and Birch. And these are the 3 R's. Replacement, so that is getting rid of the use of animals in research. Refinement, which is minimizing the harms to those experimental animals if we have to use them. And reduction, reducing the number of animals we use. But why do we need to comply with the 3 R's? First of all, it's a societal obligation. So we are doing science in the public's name. Majority of the public, from whatever country we want us to minimize harms to animals. In many countries, or an increasing number of countries, there's a legal obligation. Animal welfare laws, particularly those that speak towards research animals, say that you have to apply the 3 R's. But most importantly, we have a moral obligation. I said at the beginning, animals can't consent. We have a moral obligation as researchers to minimize harms to those experimental animals. So the first question you should all be asking yourself is, do we have to use animals at all? Can we replace them? So the ultimate aim of everybody involved in animal research should be complete replacement. So using computer models, using databases. So for example, this has really come on in toxicological studies, in safety assessments. So there's huge databases of structure-activity relationships now. So if a compound that's already being used has a similar structure to the one you're introducing, it's like to have the same toxicological effects. So there's an awful lot said of replacement of animal use by using these structure-activity databases, or using human cell cultures or tissues. We can't do complete replacement. There is the option of partial replacement. Now, those who are fundamentally opposed to animal experiments do not see this as replacement, because we are still using animals in some form. So we could use animal tissues and cell cultures of animal tissues that have been culled humanely, for example, abattoir tissues, for example. We could use invertebrates, or we could use immature or embryonic forms of vertebrates. So in the figure down here, this is a zebrafish embryo heart. It's been given a genetic alteration, so it fluoresces green. And zebrafish embryos are translucent, so you can put them under microscopes and visualize them. And they use this to look at changes in heart rate and ejection fraction, which are standard tests for in safety pharmacological assessments of new therapeutic agents. Historically, we've used anesthetized animals to look at changes in heart rate and blood pressure, etc. You can now use these embryonic forms instead. So if we must do it, then we must not reduce animal numbers, but actually optimize them. Using too few animals is just as bad as using too many. If you have too few animals, then your data is not statistically significant. So those animals are wasted. So it's optimization rather than reduction. It's putting in place a robust statistical and experimental design. So doing power calculations to make sure you have the right number of animals beforehand. Choosing your data analysis methods before you actually start the study. If you look at a lot of animal research, they used inappropriate stats to analyze the data because they haven't thought about it beforehand. Think about multiple data collection. Can you get multiple measurements from the same animal, either at the same point in time or over different points in time? As long as you are not increasing the suffering, the cumulative suffering of that individual animal. So for example, it is better to take individual blood samples from 20 animals rather than take 20 blood samples from one animal. If you're doing a drug study, can you use previous control animals as your control for a new study if you're using exactly the same methods? Instead of launching straight into your study, can you actually do techniques, etc., or experimental approach? and then do, if those show promising data, move into the larger scale study. For me, if we have to do it, the critical thing is refinement, minimizing harms. So are we choosing the most appropriate model or species? We have to think about the lifetime experience of the animal, from the moment it's born to the moment it dies. So thinking about breeding, thinking about how we house it, thinking how we look after it. Think about refined procedures. So say doing a laparotomy rather than a huge scale surgical incision, techniques that cause less suffering. It also includes how we pick them up. So refined methods of handling. So for a rat or a mouse, cup handling rather than scoffing them. Analgesics work best if we give them during general anesthesia, not
Dr.
afterwards.
Dave?
So perioperative.
Can you please try to work within the next 4 minutes around your presentation? Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So why is welfare so important? Spend an awful lot of money, time, effort developing these new potential compounds. They don't translate into into clinical practice. Depending on the study you look at, 95% of preclinical drug discovery and development studies are neither reproducible, reliable, or translatable. Globally, we're using about 100 million animals per year. So if 95% of those are wasted, it's a huge number of animals that we are wasting. If we're taking things into clinical trials, then we're putting people that are unsafe, then we're putting those individuals at risk. Drug companies are really going to focus on profit. They're not going to develop medicines for rare diseases or diseases of the emerging world. So why is animal welfare factors important? They're living beings. So everything that affects you or me will affect an animal, and therefore the quality of the data that comes out of it. So how we house them, diet, gut microbiome,
On. Okay.
If we house it properly, if we handle it properly, if we feed an appropriate diet, each one of those is not just additive, it's actually summative, it's cumulative. So as researchers, we need to really think about how everything we do to the animal and try and optimize everything. However, hopefully I've shown you that we really should apply the 3 Rs, but globally the uptake and application is limited. So drug companies in particular are spending an absolute fortune on developing 3 Rs methods. But we have the so-called valley of death. As researchers, uptake of these methods are limited. If we look across the world, animal welfare legislation differs significantly, as does ethical requirements. A lot of legislations don't actually mention the 3 Rs. A lot of countries across the world don't have animal ethics committees. Most researchers don't have a knowledge and understanding of the animal welfare implications on their research, so we need to promote that. Take it from a researcher's perspective, then if you've been, if we work with a rat or a mouse, then we have a lot of background information on their anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, etc. Science builds on that previous knowledge. If we bring in a new species, we have to build up that background knowledge before we can start developing things further. Thinking about it from an individual researcher's perspective, if you've worked for 30 years on a particular experimental technique or a particular animal, and you say, I'm giving up, I'm going to now use an invertebrate or another 3Rs approach, then really are you saying all that work, that you've done previously is wasted, irrelevant, etc. Just to finish off then, this is where the role of the ICUC is, the Animal Care Committee is critical. So really, and this is where I congratulate yourselves on developing a national guidance, which is about to release, but also developing a network of institutional animal care committees and ethics committees across the nation. So really, the role of the ICUC, critically, it is the voice to the animal. But also it can build in institutional perspectives. So does an institution want to do particular research or use particular species, etc.? But also it's the public voice. It does require all members to be active and to fully input to it, not just sit there for the sake of being there. Different people have different roles and responsibilities. So the animal welfare expert, the vet, the scientist, etc. Everybody should have an equal opinion, that everybody's views should actually be respected, irrespective of where they are in the hierarchy. So the key questions for the ICUC are, is it necessary? If it is necessary, is the research taking all steps to minimize harms and maximize benefits? Are they applying the 3Rs? Etc. Is it experimental statistical design? And also a key role of the ICUC is learning from previous studies. Thinking about what went wrong, what worked with previous studies, and making sure going forward that that learning is applied to future studies. And critically, to create what we call an institutional cultural care. Everybody across the institution, from the principal down to the animal caretaker, is working to improve the welfare of animals, the quality of the science, etc. That we all buy into that concept. But just to reiterate that, the commitment of everybody, highest quality of animal care and application of 3Rs, scientific quality, care of staff, transparency, so appropriate attitudes and behaviours from the top down to the bottom.
Dave, excuse me, Dave. Can you pause a little bit?
Wherever they are in the chain is empowered to do their job, and that all voices and concerns are listened to. And only then can we ensure appropriate use of animals and ethical use of animals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Dave, for your presentation. I want to take this opportunity to ask everybody in this room to stand up and welcome our guest of honor, the Honorable Minister.
Over to you, Mr. Chair.
Can we stand up and honor the national and other anthems?
Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu. Uzalendo pia mshikamano viwe msingi wa umoja wetu. na tulinde uhuru na amani, mila zetu na desturi zetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu. Viwandani na hata mashambani, tufanye kazi sote kwa makini, tujitoe kwa hali na mali, tuijenge jumuiya bora. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for making it, Honorable Minister. You are most welcome. Well, by the time you came in, we are concluding a presentation on ethical issues in the use of animals research. And in the next 5 minutes, we are going to have about 2 or 3 questions arising from the presentation I've just heard. And thereafter, we will move to the next session. Thank you very much. So going to questions arising from the 2 presentations I've had. The first question goes to Dr. Zawede. Someone is wondering, how best can local people who own these natural products make satisfactory negotiations with companies minus political influence?
Thank you very much for the question. I think the best strategy is, as a country, we need to set up councils or committees in different communities. And we need to develop their capacities, especially when a community has been identified to have a valuable natural product. Develop their capacity to negotiate, but also we need to have increasing number of legal members that are helping us with the negotiations, both at country level, at community level, but also as we go in for international negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that response. The next question goes to Dr. Dave. Is there any maximum number of animals recommended by regulatory bodies to be used in a research?
So, hope you can hear me. There is, from the legislations I know, there is no maximum number. It is very much demand driven. So really what it should be is that if you can show that you are using the appropriate number for your study, then that is it. There is no maximum number as such. To actually do an animal, do a study that was underpowered, so too few animals would actually be unethical, because those animals would be wasted.
Okay, thank you very much for your response. And I think it's very clear. You can use as many animals as you must use. If you can use fewer, the better. And I think this is what normally the research ethics committees, or what, no, in the case of animals, they're called institutional animal care and use committees. These are the questions they would be interested in researchers answering, if it is necessary that they must use animals, as the presenter mentioned, and in that case, if they must use as many animals as they say they want to use according to the protocol. So in the interest of time, we won't be able to take more questions or comments arising from the presentations that we just heard. And for that matter, I'll declare this mini session over, and then we are going to have the next session. I remain John Barugahare. I should have mentioned at the beginning that I'm a member of the Research Ethics Committee for Mulago Hospital and the School of Health Sciences, two different research ethics committees. And to my co-chair, I don't know if he has something more to say before we.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Honorable, for coming, and thank you so much, Professor Dev, for the inciting presentation. He has set so many questions for us, so many perspectives, and also to question our moral obligations when it comes to dealing with animals in research. And the guideline that will be launched soon will provide us that direction. Otherwise, I remain Dr. Lawrence Mugisha, Associate Professor in the College of Veterinary Medicine, Animal Sausage, and Biosecurity. Thank you so much.
Okay, we thank you very much for your attention, everybody, those here physically and those online. And now I hand over to the APC chair to take us through the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. John Barugahare and Dr. Lawrence. We want to thank Dr. Zawede for the excellent presentation she's given us this morning. And ladies and gentlemen, we are honored this afternoon to have the Honorable Minister, the Minister of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, Honorable Frank Tumwebaze. I would like to take this opportunity once again to thank all the participants, physical and those that have joined in online. I really appreciate all the speakers, panelists, moderators, and organizers. On my own behalf as the chair of the Advisory and Planning Committee of the virtual 11th ANREC, Dr. Gertrude Chiwanuka from Barra University of Science and Technology, I would like to inform all the participants and the Honorable Minister that on average we've had about 500 or so participants on each of the 3 days of this ANREC. And Honorable Minister, on Tuesday we were graced to have the Honorable Minister of Science, Technology and Innovations launch the National Biobanking Guidelines. And today we are very glad and honored to have you, Honorable Minister, to come and listen to the very last presentation which we are going to have in this session. And then we are also privileged that in this 11th ANREC, we are going to have another launch of the guidelines that are related to that excellent presentation that has been given to us by Dr. Lewis all the way from UK. And for the participants, those that are here and those who are joining in online, I just want to mention that the summary of the proceedings will be posted on the UNCST website because we seem not to be having time for me to go through the proceedings. So I will encourage every one of you, including institutional leaders, to visit the website. Immediately, UNCST Secretariat sends you notification that they have been posted. But quickly, Honorable Minister and the participants, I just want to make mention of 4 or 5 take-home messages from this ANREC before we move on to the next presentation. And then I will also invite the acting Executive Secretary of the UNCST at some point. So our very first take-home message from this ANREC is that research drives the economy, or researchers should move to the level of self-regulation and become more ethically trusted. Research integrity affects all parts of the research life cycle and should always be present at each of those stages. Mentoring still remains key, and as such, institutions should strengthen mentoring programs. Senior researchers should be available to mentor junior researchers, and that includes postgraduate students. Research integrity should be expanded to include all sectors and not only the health sector as it is at the moment. Recent revisions of the common rule for research involving research participants and a non-exempt from IRB review require now that informed consent documents should begin with a section on why or why not one should participate in research. Additionally, broad consent for future storage has also been added to the regulations. The other take-home message from this UNREC is that in pandemics, it's been noticed that research misconduct increases in the process of producing therapeutic products. And as such, researchers and regulatory bodies should step up and uphold research integrity. The last take-home message is that Uganda has a Data Protection and Privacy Act. Privacy is a fundamental human right. The right is privacy, the duty is confidentiality. Unlawful obtaining or disclosing of personal data, alteration of personal data, and selling or offering of sale of personal data are criminal offenses. However, the interpretation of this data should look at the public good to ensure a balance between research and the law. The rest you will find on the UNCST website. Thank you very much. And at this juncture, I would like my co-chair, Dr. Sylvia, to introduce our next speaker.
Yeah, thank you very much, our chair, Dr. Gertrude Chwanuka. Thank you for ably leading us and steering the organizing of this very important conference. Before I invite our next speaker, let me start again by introducing myself, Dr. Sylvia Ngubua Baluka. I'm from the College of Veterinary Medicine, Animal Resources, and Biosecurity. I would like to welcome all of us to this last session of the 11th Annual Research Ethics Conference organized by the Uganda National Council for Science and Technology. I would like to recognize and appreciate each one of you, starting with our chief guest, Honorable Frank Tumwebaze, the Minister of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, and all of you leaders of MDS who are here, the Executive Secretary, Uganda National Council for Science and Technology, the Secretary to the Authority, National Drug Authority, that is ably represented by Director of Product Safety, our Commissioner, Animal Health and the Chief Veterinary Officer for Uganda, Dr. Demuni Anna Rose, who was part of the task force, but who was represented by Dr. Ben Senkera, and is also here. Dr. Ben Senkera is here today to also represent our Chief Veterinary Officer for Uganda, and Maif. Just to set the context in maybe 1 minute before our speaker comes on, as we launch these guidelines to guide all researchers using animals in teaching and research, I would like to remind us that we are celebrating 50 years of veterinary education in Uganda. And on that note, I would like to recognize the Dean, who is my boss. Let me request our Dean of the School of Veterinary Medicine and Animal Resources, the College of Veterinary Medicine, Animal Resources and Biosecurity, Makerere University. This is Professor Tweyongere Robert. Please stand up for a second. The Dean is here. He's representing Makerere and therefore representing veterinary education in Uganda. We have come of age. We are celebrating 50 years. COVID has confused our celebration. That's why you don't feel us, but we are still finding ways to celebrate, even scientifically. So these guidelines are coming in at a time when we are rethinking veterinary education in Uganda. They are very timely, and that's why we are very grateful to Uganda National Council for Science and Technology and all their partners who supported this process. Thank you so much. And on that note, I also recognize the task force members who are part of this process since 2018 when we started preparing these guidelines. You are all recognized. Please make sure you don't miss out on a scientific photo with our chief guest. I would also like to appreciate the members of the APC who have been working behind the curtains and working virtually to make sure we have a successful 11th ANREC. You are all recognized. And finally, as we said, the context, agro-industrialization and value addition focusing on agricultural sector was given a prominence in our NDP3, and that is good for us, and these guidelines will definitely be put to use. Innovation, technology development and transfer, which is in chapter 17, was also given priority in NDP3. And also, when we look at the SDGs 1, no poverty by 2030, SDG 2, zero hunger by 2030, they all will hinge on us having these guidelines and utilizing them very well. Lastly, Honorable Minister, I do add my voice to congratulate you and welcome you to the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries. I am the immediate past president of the Uganda Veterinary Association. I missed you narrowly. I would have loved working with you, but I am still available. Even the College of Veterinary Medicine, Mackay University, we do partner with the ministry so much, and we do support you. Whenever we are called upon, we are always available to support you as a ministry. I would also like to appreciate His Excellence for sending you to us in agriculture. I am optimistic that your presence in the ministry is going to make the youth love agriculture. Many young people think agriculture is for old people. Many young people think people in agriculture are not smart. So I do believe that your presence in agriculture is going to provide the momentum that we have been waiting for. I commend you for starting off by prioritizing animal health. Foot and mouth disease is my research area, and I am grateful that you started with it. I wait to see that celebration when we shall eradicate foot and mouth disease one day, like we eradicated rinderpest. Honorable Minister, I know you have passion for agriculture. I first interacted with you when you were chairman of Uganda National Farmers Federation many years ago, and therefore I know it was a wise choice to send you to us. We warmly welcome you. We pledge to support you, and I would like to commit the researchers who are here and those who are on the virtual audience. I would like to commit us to rally behind our Honorable Minister and support his vision to transform this sector. This sector holds the keys to solve problems related to food insecurity, related to climate change, animal diseases, and many others. And finally, youth unemployment. Youth unemployment, agriculture has a key. We can create so many employments for the youth if we support the minister in his vision to change this sector. And as we all know, if I step the other side briefly on the global public health side, youth unemployment drives urban crime and insecurity. Even if the unemployed youth are hunted and incarcerated globally, employment for the youth through our research and innovations. I would like to thank you so much. And finally, I would like to recognize the next speaker, who is none other than Professor Lawrence Mugisha, who was the able chair of the National Task Force that developed the guidelines that we are about to launch. And I invite you to address us and share with us this guideline that we are looking forward to receiving. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, moderator. Honorable Minister, you are most welcome. Our participants, both physical and online, Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dr. Lawrence Mugisha, and I'm going to quickly take you through what we went through in developing these guidelines, and also to note that I'm not the only one who developed these guidelines, but it was through a national task force together with a drafting team, which you will see later. Animals are part of our ecosystem, and because of that, they have been part of they are part of us, and they are part of mankind, and we have benefited a lot from everything in animals. But now when it comes to research, we need to take an extra mile and a keen interest and ask ourselves, do we need animals in research? If it is a yes, what do we need to do in order to use the, animals very well in research? So we recognize that the use of animals in research, education, and teaching. So let me just minimize this. And teaching is an essential component in understanding the human and animal function and health in terms of physiology and functionality, and also to understand the disease processes, disease prevention, cures, new treatments, drugs, and the development of new devices. And because of that, we must comply with scientific standards that are globally acceptable. And for that to happen, it will facilitate collaboration, publication, and funding, and many others that we need in order to use animals in research. Use of animals in research we must be responsible, and use responsible conduct and quality assurance while performing our scientific work. And that's when we talk about reproducibility, reliability, and so on. But more importantly, we've been shared with the 5 F's, freedoms of animal. And we must promote the animal welfare and ensure animal welfare while conducting our scientific research. Just to bring it back home, these guidelines are not alien to us. They are very well entrenched within our national regulations and acts. I'm not seeing very well, but with our Animal Act, the Animal Prevention of Cruelty Act of 5th December 1957, Section 11 and 12 provides conditions and restrictions for experiments on living animals. Just to remember, this act has been in place since 1957. And we scientists, we claim we have not been aware that we needed to treat these animals very well, and that there is no regulatory mechanism. Section 11 of the same act, no person shall perform on a living animal any experiment calculated to give pain, except to the restrictions imposed by Section 12. We will read more of that act and get the details. The Section 12, subsection 1 and subsection A of the act, the experiment shall be performed only with a view to the advancement of new knowledge and all physiological knowledge useful for saving life. And when we say saving life, it should be saving life of both humans and animals. And it should be performed under a licensed person. And we need to understand who is a licensed person when it comes to veterinary. Section 13, Honorable Minister, gives you powers to grant and revoke licenses for those going to undertake research using animals. And there are details on your powers, Honorable Minister. This is in line with international guidelines. We are not working in isolation. Under the international framework for the Council for the International Organization for Medical Sciences and the International Council for the Laboratory Animal Sciences, established guiding principles for biomedical research involving animals. And what is it saying? It says animals play a vital role in scientific activities. Good animal welfare is integral to achieving scientific and educational goals. Therefore, decisions regarding the welfare, care, and use of animals should be guided by scientific and professional judgment, reflect ethical and societal values, and consider the potential benefits and the impact of well-being of the animals involved in scientific research. Animals should only be used only when necessary and only when their use is scientifically and ethically justified. And the previous speaker shared with us the three principles of R: replacement, reduction, and refinement should be incorporated in the design and the conduct of scientific and educational activities involving animals. Animals selected for the activity should be suitable. We have several animal species, and you cannot say I'm going to conduct research and any animal is suitable. It should be suitable for the purpose and appropriate with genetic background to ensure scientific validity and reproducibility. The welfare, care, and use of animals should be under the supervision of a licensed veterinarian or scientist trained and with experience in animal health, welfare, proper handling, and use of species must be maintained or studied. Investigators should assume, and this is very, very important, investigators should assume that procedures that would cause pain or distress in human beings cause pain or distress in animals unless there is evidence to the contrary. Under the OIE, that is the World Health for Animal Organization for Animal Health, it states, and we are signatory, we are member of the OIE, and it states that animals should only be used when necessary. It is in the same line with the international framework I've already produced, and this statement is almost the same: when necessary, ethically justified, and when no other alternative methods are available. I will not read all of it. But under the European Union Animal Welfare Directive of 2010, stroke 63, it also emphasizes, it gives a directive that all member states under European Union must ensure protection of animals used for scientific purposes. And the directive aimed at protecting animals in scientific research with the final aim of replacing all animals with non-animal methods. This is what I wanted to share from here. And you remember our act drew a lot of lessons from the UK Cruelty of Animal Act, which since then has been updated to Animal Scientific Procedures Act of 1986. And I'm not going to read again, the requirements are almost the same with what I've already presented. And with that background, it is on this basis that the Uganda National Council of Science and Technology put up a process in place and appointed a national task force in 2018 composed of 21 members to develop these guidelines. And the members are displayed. I'm not going through their names, but allow me to recognize that one of us during the process, God decided to take him away, and I'd like us to observe a second in recognition and honor of Professor Johnson Achon, who was the member of the National Task Force. Just 2 seconds. May his soul rest in eternal peace. The team was led by a small team in writing, in drafting of about 8 members that really stand all different papers locally, internationally, in order to come up with this guideline. And the team is there. At the time of the launch, they will come in front here and we'll be able to see them. We went through a process, and this is very, very, very important. We started on 27th of November 2018, when the task force was officially inaugurated at Uganda National Council of Science and Technology. And since then, we have gone through various stages and processes of consultations until today when we are here, and we are having the guidelines that are going to be officially launched. But importantly, during the consultation, it is important to remember that consulting the public is very, very important. And on that note, in October 2019, we held a national stakeholders consultative workshop, and that one informed so much of the guidelines before we could get the final version. And with that, Honorable Minister, and our participants, both physical and viewers, that is the background, that is the genesis of the guidelines we are going to have launched officially today. And I thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Lawrence Mugisha, for giving us the background to the guidelines that are going to be launched this afternoon by the Honorable Minister. I want to re-echo your appreciation to everyone who contributed to these guidelines from 2018. That shows commitment. And as someone from the academia, I really know that we have been eagerly waiting to have these guidelines launched. So at this juncture, Lawrence, maybe you. At this juncture, I would like to invite the Acting Executive Secretary of the Uganda National Council for Science and Technology to come and just give us his reflections briefly of the ANREC to inform the Honorable Minister, and also go ahead to invite the Honorable Minister to speak to the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, Organizing Committee for the 11th ANREC. Honorable Minister of Agriculture and Animal Industry, I would like to welcome you to the 11th ANREC, and also let you know that in this launch of the National Guidelines for Use of Animals in Research and Teaching, we have representatives from the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, the National Drug Authority, the College of Veterinary Medicine, Animal Resources and Biosecurity, Makerere University, the National Livestock Resources Research Institute, NALIRI, the National Agricultural Research Organization, the Uganda Wildlife Authority, members of the task force that developed the animal guidelines, members of the academic community, and also we have quite a sizable number who are online, and some of them are from within the East African region. So the 11th ANREC, the theme was mainly fostering research integrity and responsible conduct of research within the region. It started on Monday, where we talked about biobanking, and we ended up launching the national biobanking guidelines, which is quite important in the research system. And yesterday we talked about regulations in the research area, and today we focused mainly on animal research and use of animals in research. So these guidelines will really guide us on how we can do research. And actually I can state that before the launch of these guidelines, our scientific work had questions in terms of validity because we didn't have a national guideline. But this in place now, it will make sure that our research now is conducted in a humane and a proper manner. And also it will help researchers not to get into problems. I remember personally, I got into problems sometimes back when I said I slaughtered 56 animals, and then people were very annoyed. They said, no, you should have said you have sacrificed 56 animals, you handle them in a humane manner, and the like. So it will really help us to move forward. And I think a lot have been discussed, so I'm not going to add any more additional information. So now I will proceed by inviting you to give the closing remarks. And then after the closing remarks, you shall have the launch of the National Guidelines for Use of Animals in Research and Teaching. Honorable Minister, you're most welcome to give your presentation.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The ED of the National Council of Science and Technology, the president of the Veterinary Association,
Emeritus.
Emeritus. So the current one is Professor Nwagawa.
No.
No.
Dr. Kasiule Daniel.
Okay.
Dr. Nwagawa is chairman of the Uganda Veterinary Board.
Okay. My OG doctor from Mbara University. Do you know about Mbara University?
We do.
Look at her and look at me next.
Mm.
All the scientists in this room, the stakeholders, the people online who are supporting the development of these guidelines on the use of animals in research. So you're essentially about ethics, isn't it?
Yes.
So they've written me a speech which I have abandoned. Don't think I am a bad person, because the subject you are discussing, you are very competent about, isn't it?
Yes.
And you are doing justice to it. For me, I just want to build on that. For you, you are discussing how to do research ethically in animals, isn't it? So why should I have headache when you are there doing that? But there is where I have headache. So would I be out of order to discuss the areas I have headache?
No.
Because you are going to perfectly come up with all the protocols, reform them on ensuring that you don't violate the rights of our animals because they don't talk. Essentially, that's it in simple language. Because for me, I can give you informed consent, right? So the animal cannot give you informed consent. So even if I don't bother, I can discuss, I can engage. That's what we are battling with, because the animal can't talk. So you must regulate yourself to ensure that you don't violate the rights of this person who can't talk, called the animal. So thank you for that. And I believe there is no other body that can best do that other than the Council of Science and Technology, other than our professional faculties from our leading universities. But my question now should be, why do research in the first place? Yeah, just on the side. The side. Yeah. My two areas of concern, colleagues and professionals of science, is why do research? You do research for who, isn't it? And to what extent is this research informing our policy discourse? To me, these are my 2 points. I know each of those requires another session of its own to discuss, isn't it? Because there's a lot, if you looked at literature on the utilization of research evidence in policy making, it's a huge volume. So you do research to improve our breeding, isn't it? You do research to help in disease control and mitigation. Okay? Of course, someone can say, I do research to get a degree in medicine. Because that's what you say, partial fulfillment of the requirements. That thing annoys me. So in other words, if there was no requirement of a degree, people wouldn't be doing research. So I am not going into another area of controversy. So research is not, the academic part really, in my view, is small. It's for the career development of individuals. But for this case, you do research to improve our breeding. You do research to help in the fight of disease. You get it? And you do research to inform policy. So the question is, are these uses of research, are these objectives of research, are they being achieved? Are the breeders linked to research? Is an Greek here? Is Naro here? There's another one called Nakori or something. Nariri, Nakori. There are so many Naris, Nakoris, Nabrigs. They are there. So are they linked to this? Is their work? Are there programs? Are there projects? Of course, even the donors. Donors are pattern donors, Ministry of Finance, isn't it? The Planning Authority of Uganda. All of those is research driving that agenda of the breeding. I would want another seminar. Ministry of Agriculture could even work with the council to have that discussion. Yes, I would want that one. How is our farmers across it, wherever, to bring all sorts of animals? Now, the question is, are those the right animals to be here? What is good for the dairy? What is good for beef? Which one is dual purpose? Okay? Which one is relevant for our tropical areas? When you hear the frustrations of farmers, they say, you, President Museveni, you told us to leave our local breeds so many years back. Of course, some communities are still stuck with their local breeds, isn't it? Yes, we are still fighting with the East. They feel their local breeds are safer. Even myself, I still maintain my longhorn cattle. I don't get much from them, neither do I get any headache. That's the principle. I don't put in much, I don't get much. But here comes this other breed, the milk machine. It's beautiful, it gives you 10 liters, 20 liters. But when I look at the costs, call them costs of maintenance, the treatments, isn't it? The bush clearing, the water management, it doesn't make economic sense. So, where is the problem now? Where is it? Yes, because the markets want free, disease-free dairy products. They want disease-free beef, isn't it? So the export market is that detailed. So who is now helping the farmer to prepare for that? Yes. So I really would want to see research informing breeding. Thank you for the ethical considerations. Those I'm not worried. You are competent enough to handle. I clap for you. And please continue. When I see Professor Kawa, when I see it, I know you're competent on that. But even then, when you do that research and you have the guidelines, we pass to ensure they are enforced in the actual application. So from breeding, we go to disease control. So I have just picked your colleagues and put them on a committee. It is full of people like you, headed by Professor Kabas. I want to know, where is the problem? Is it are the parasites or the agrochemicals fake, as people say? Is it tick resistance? And therefore we need to think of either the new drugs or methods of applicability, or is it wrong extension to the farmers? Me, I have told the Ministry of Agriculture, it's no longer opinions, it's no longer, and there's a word I love, but pronouncing it sometimes is difficult. Anecdotal, is that the word? Anecdotal. You know, I love it. When I was presenting my thesis to my professors at the School of Public Health, interestingly, my thesis was on utilization of such evidence. That's why I'm passionate about it. And I was trying to review, it was a master's in public health. I'm also not very far from you, somehow. When you're speaking, I can understand some things. And you know why I did public health? Because of staying near Dr. Chiwanuka and the associates at Mbara University. So we had a debate in the where you defend your how do they call it? Yeah, I've forgotten. Viva, where you appear the big people to determine your fate. So I quoted, I had reviewed a certain policy called medicines policy. I said this topic lacked evidence. Here they applied the research of somebody. So I graded the policy that it has utilized the evidence to this percentage. They were very happy. Then I made recommendations. The head of public service should do this. Then two professors, I don't want to mention their names, disagreed. Then one said, wait a minute, what is policy? What is the research evidence? Which content do you consider to be research evidence? Then one said, it must be something published, something researched. Then another one, I don't want to mention their names because you know them. And I said, Professor, you're wrong. What about an opinion of an expert? Then another one says, what if another expert comes and gives a different one? They debated. Then I said, sirs, as you continue your debate, for me, my belief is that anecdotal sources cannot be forms of evidence. So I moved out. I don't know whether I passed, but finally I got my degree. So this is what I've told the Minister of Agriculture, please. Let's respect scientists, isn't it? When we are battling with a certain problem, let's look at what scientists have found out. Because you make recommendations in your libraries. There's a lot there. So dissemination of research findings, comrades, is a problem. I discovered that, is it doctor or professor? Budrico. He had written a number of things about tick resistance. So you, Minister of Agriculture, why are you not using this work of these scientists? Why are you not taking it to cabinet? So fortunately, you have now a Minister of Science and a passionate scientist. Let's all collectively make sure that work of scientists in animals, in the crop husbandry, in the fish, in the human, come on table for policymakers to understand. Simplify the language, please. The language you use at College of Science should not be the language for policymakers. Simplify it, isn't it? Trypanomiosis, what is it? Simplify it for people to do what? Understand. Yes, that's how people will listen to you. We are ready to push a lot of funding into R&D. Now that we've seen that innovations are really brain children of universities. So then my final point, how do we commercialize research innovations? Because that's not your expertise. You have the brains, you innovate, isn't it? Government is willing to support. You have a president who is so passionate about supporting scientists. But the question is, how will you commercialize your products? Huh? People were saying, for you to get Covidex, call Professor Gwanga. Imagine, I call a scientist to give me Covidex. How do other people do it? This aspirin we buy. Do we still call that man who manufactured aspirin or what?
The industry.
The industry. So I guess there is some other competence that must be married to research, post-research, multiplication, and commercial production. Then the question is, how do you protect the right, the value of the inventor? It's about now the economics. So you need research, you need to discuss the economics, you need to discuss the Professor Kaho knows what I'm talking about. She knows what we've been discussing. So I want to thank you for discussing, for meeting to discuss professional policy issues of the ESCO areas in animal. But please don't stop there. Continue, define the why and the how. Tell us what you want us to do. Honestly, if policy in all fields is research informed, you will not get even misuse of public resources because the interventions will be well sought out. You will not get changing policies even when politicians change. Yes, I am a minister of agriculture today, tomorrow another one will come, or even tomorrow another leader will come. So, but if the policies are informed by research, and they are effective, results are clear, then we would not be flip-flopping, going back, coming forward, changing, policy reversal, policy reform that has no basis at all. So I want to thank you for your time, and it's my pleasure to launch the guidelines. If I can see them and feel them, then I release them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We have a dummy there, so I request that you go over there. Now, because we don't have enough space up here, allow me to only invite a few individuals who are here to join the Honorable Minister. May I please have Dr. Kware and Dr. Helen from NDA and then the Dean of the College of Veterinary. And I don't know if we have Dr. Nakwagala around to represent FRECU. All right, could we have Professor Biachika up here? The Vice Chairperson APC, Dr. Mafijiri. I think we are going to count 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, Yes. As the photographs are being taken, I would like once again to thank all the participants, especially those who have been online all the time. We started right from Tuesday up to today. Thank you very much for your active participation. Once again, I would like to thank the Advisory and Planning Committee of the virtual 11th ANREC. I would like to thank UNCST and the partners for organizing this very, very successful 11th ANREC. I also want to thank all the speakers, the panelists, and everyone who has been behind this very successful ANREC. Thank you very much. The FRECU chairperson who is not here, I do want to recognize all the contribution from the different chairpersons of the research ethics committees in the country. Thank you very much. And also those who have come today to be with us as the minister launches the guidelines of use of animals in research and training. Thank you so very much. And may God bless you for God and my country. Now I would like to ask the Honorable Minister to take a seat, and we quickly take a photograph, and then he will close this 11th ANREC. National Task Force of the guidelines, could you please quickly come? Members of the task force, could you quickly take the photograph, and then finally we shall have the members of the APC to take the last photograph with the minister. All right, members of the APC, quickly come.
Okay. So now, participants, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to declare the conference closed. Thank you.
Happening now. NBS. Always. Have you ever wondered?